Story 1. I came home on my 23rd birthday with a grocery store cake. Mom said, "No celebration this year. Your sister needs our full attention." So I packed my bags that night and disappeared. Years later, I'm a millionaire and they're all begging for scraps. Sup Reddit. My family canceled my birthday to coddle my manipulative sister. So I left with nothing and built an empire. What followed was the sweetest revenge I never planned. Here's how it went down. Picture this. I'm 23 years old, walking through the front door after an 8-hour shift at the hardware store, holding a chocolate cake I bought myself from the grocery store bakery. Cost me $6. Had happy birthday written in blue frosting that was already smearing from the heat. It wasn't much, but it was mine. My parents, Patricia and Dennis, were sitting in the living room with my sister Haley, like some kind of intervention setup. The second I walked in, my mom looked up with this expression, not quite pity, more like practiced disappointment, and delivered the news. "Blake, we've decided there won't be any birthday celebration this year. Haley's been feeling overshadowed lately and needs the family's full attention right now. You understand." Not a question. A statement. Like my feelings on the matter were irrelevant background noise. Haley sat on the worn leather couch looking appropriately distressed, fake tears already forming in her eyes. That's when something clicked in my brain. This wasn't just another instance of me being invisible in my own family. This was the final straw in a lifetime of being erased. I set the cake down on the coffee table without a word, walked straight to my room, and started packing everything I owned. The suffocating weight of that moment made perfect sense when I thought about the previous 20 years of my life. Let me back up and explain the family dynamic that created this disaster. Haley is 2 years younger than me. When she was 8, she won some junior beauty pageant, one of those small regional competitions that desperate parents convince themselves matter. I remember that day clearly, because it was the last time my parents looked at me with genuine pride. Right before they handed Haley that cheap plastic trophy, everything changed. From that moment forward, every family event, every saved dollar, every ounce of parental attention got redirected toward Haley's endless pageants, dance classes, voice lessons, and acting coaches. The house transformed into a shrine to her mediocre talents. My straight-A report cards got brief nods, while Haley's participation ribbons got framed and mounted on every available wall. When I got accepted to the state science fair with a project I'd spent months developing, my achievement vanished beneath the excitement of Haley's next competition. I learned to celebrate my victories alone in my room, while the living room became Haley's personal stage. Dad started working overtime at the factory to pay for Haley's expensive competition dresses and travel costs. He'd come home looking destroyed, eat dinner in silence, then sit through hours of Haley practicing her routines. I watched him age a decade in 3 years. His shoulders permanently slumped from the weight of financial pressure and emotional exhaustion. The only person who saw through this madness was my grandfather Walter, Dad's estranged father who lived across town. The family rarely talked about Walter because he and Mom had some ancient feud about him not supporting Haley's pageant dreams financially. Smart man. But Walter would secretly meet me at the library or park, bringing sandwiches and actually listening when I talked about school, my part-time job at the hardware store, my college plans. He was the one who celebrated when I got accepted to state college with a partial scholarship. He even opened a small college fund for me without telling anyone, making deposits whenever he could. What made that birthday night even worse was what I'd overheard 3 hours earlier. I'd come home early from my shift and heard Haley on the phone in her room. Her door was cracked open, and her voice had that fake sweetness she used when spinning lies to her friends. "Yeah, I already told Mom that I need extra attention right now," Haley said, giggling. "I mean, Blake's birthday is tomorrow, but who cares? I told them I've been feeling really depressed and overlooked. Mom bought it completely. She's going to tell him tonight that we're not celebrating because I need family support." I stood frozen in the hallway as she continued. "The best part is that nobody knows I flunked out of college 3 weeks ago. That dismissal letter from the registrar is going to arrive any day now. But by then I'll have convinced them that I dropped out because I was too stressed from the family focusing on Blake instead of me. Can you believe he still lives here at 23? What a loser." She laughed, that cruel little sound I'd heard 1,000 times before. "I already have Mom convinced that we need to spend Blake's birthday talking about my feelings and my future. By the time that letter arrives, they'll be so worried about my mental health that they won't even care about the $40,000 they wasted on my tuition. $40,000. They told me they couldn't help with my college expenses because money was tight, but they'd spent 40 grand on Haley's education that she'd just thrown away. I felt something break inside me in that moment. Something that had been cracking for years finally shattered completely. So when I walked in 3 hours later with that pathetic store-bought cake and saw them all sitting there, ready to cancel my birthday for Haley's manufactured crisis, I knew exactly what was happening. Haley had orchestrated this whole thing to deflect from her academic failure. She was using my birthday as a distraction, turning herself into the victim before the truth could come out. Mom sat forward on the couch, hands folded in that practiced way she had when delivering what she thought was motherly wisdom. Blake, you need to understand that Haley is going through a very difficult time right now. She's been feeling like the family doesn't appreciate her enough, and we need to show her that she's our priority. Your birthday happens every year, but Haley's emotional well-being is fragile. We need to come together as a family and support her. That means no celebration, no cake, no presents. We're going to spend the evening talking about Haley's feelings and how we can better support her dreams. I looked at Dad, hoping for some sign of resistance, some flicker of awareness that this was wrong. But Dennis just stared at his hands, defeated as always. He'd given up fighting years ago, choosing survival over confrontation. Haley finally spoke, her voice trembling with fake emotion. I'm sorry, Blake. I know this is hard for you, but I just feel so invisible sometimes. Like nobody sees how much I'm struggling. I need to know that this family cares about me, that I'm not just forgotten. Forgotten. She actually said that word. The girl whose face covered every wall, whose trophies filled every shelf, whose needs determined every family decision, she felt forgotten. Meanwhile, I'd been sleeping in the same tiny bedroom since I was 5, because Haley needed the bigger room for her pageant costumes. I'd been wearing the same 3 pairs of jeans for 2 years, because Haley needed new outfits for Instagram photos. I'd been forgotten so thoroughly that most extended family members couldn't even remember what I was studying in college. That's when I made my decision. No announcement, no dramatic confrontation, no begging for recognition. I simply set that sad little cake on the coffee table, looked at each of them one last time, and walked to my room. They probably thought I was going to sulk like I had so many times before. They had no idea I was about to disappear from their lives completely. I moved through my room with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning this escape subconsciously for years. Every drawer got emptied, every important document gathered, every piece of clothing I actually cared about folded into 2 large duffel bags and a backpack. The room looked strange as I packed, like it was finally revealing what it had always been, a temporary stop rather than a home. My entire life fit into 3 bags. That's what 23 years in this house amounted to. 3 bags and a college acceptance letter. I heard footsteps in the hallway around midnight. Dad knocked softly on my door. Blake, can I come in? I opened the door. He stood there looking older than his 48 years, shoulders hunched, eyes tired. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd come to his senses. Maybe he was finally going to stand up for me. Instead, he pulled out his wallet and handed me 5 crumpled $100 bills. This is all I have right now, he said quietly. I know things aren't fair. I know we've failed you. But I don't know how to fix it anymore. Your mother, Haley, I just don't have any fight left. I took the money. Not because I thought it made things right, but because I knew I'd need it. $500 was more than he'd ever given me for anything. The fact that it came with an apology for my entire childhood somehow made it worse. Thanks, I said flatly. Where will you go? Does it matter? He looked like I'd slapped him, but he didn't argue, just nodded and walked away, shoulders somehow more slumped than before. I left at 2 a.m. while everyone was asleep, threw my bags in my beat-up Honda Civic that had 187,000 miles on it, and drove to the one place I knew I'd be welcome, Grandpa Walter's small house across town. Walter opened the door in his bathrobe, took one look at my bags and my face, and just stepped aside to let me in without questions. That's the thing about Walter. He didn't need explanations. He understood instantly. Birthday went well, I take it, he said dryly, heading to the kitchen to make hot chocolate. I told him everything. The conversation I'd overheard, the canceled celebration, the 500 from Dad. Walter listened without interrupting, his weathered hands wrapped around his mug, jaw working like he was physically restraining himself from saying what he really thought. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You can stay here as long as you need, he finally said. The spare room's yours. No rent, no conditions. Just promise me you'll finish college and make something of yourself. Best revenge is living well. I promised. That spare room became my launching pad. I worked full-time at the hardware store, went to classes, and spent every spare moment learning about real estate investment. Walter, it turned out, had dabbled in property renovation decades ago. He taught me everything he knew about finding undervalued properties, doing budget renovations, and maximizing rental income. The college fund he'd been secretly building for me turned out to be $8,000, enough to cover a year's tuition if I stayed local and kept working. I finished my degree in 3 years instead of 4 by taking summer classes and maxing out my credit hours each semester. Meanwhile, my family fell apart without me there to be the scapegoat. The dismissal letter from Haley's college arrived 2 weeks after I left. Mom called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that progressed from angry to desperate to guilt-tripping. Blake, your sister needs you right now. This is a family crisis. How can you abandon us like this? We need to present a united front. Call me back immediately. I deleted every message without listening to them fully. Through Walter, who maintained sparse contact with Dad, I learned what was happening. The $40,000 tuition bill was due. Haley's mental health crisis defense didn't hold up when the registrar explained she'd failed every single class from sheer lack of attendance. Mom was furious. Dad was resigned. Haley was playing victim harder than ever, somehow making her academic failure about the family not supporting her emotional needs enough. Without me there as the buffer, the responsible one who made everyone else's dysfunction look less bad by comparison, they had to actually look at each other. Apparently, they didn't like what they saw. I graduated college at 24 with a degree in business administration and exactly 0 family members in attendance. Walter came, bringing a small cake and a card with a check for $1,000. Investment capital, he called it. Go make your first deal. That summer, I found a foreclosed property through a bank auction listing. 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood that had been sitting empty for 8 months. The grass was waist high, the paint was peeling, and the interior looked like it had been abandoned mid-renovation by someone who'd run out of money and hope. Perfect. The bank was listing it at $52,000, but I could tell they were desperate. Properties in this condition scared off most buyers who wanted move-in ready homes. I spent a week researching comparable sales, calculating repair costs, and building a detailed renovation budget. Offered $47,000, expecting them to counter. They accepted $45,000 within 24 hours. Used Walter's $1,000 investment plus every penny I'd saved from 3 years of working at the hardware store as a down payment. Got a small business loan for the rest, with the property itself as collateral. The bank officer looked skeptical when I walked in with my renovation plans and budget spreadsheets, but the numbers were solid. He approved it. The next 6 months were brutal. I'd work my regular job during the day, then head to the property and work until midnight or later. Ripped out the disgusting carpet, found beautiful oak hardwood underneath that just needed refinishing, patched and painted every surface, replaced outdated light fixtures with modern alternatives from the hardware store where I got my employee discount, landscaped the yard myself, spending weekends pulling weeds and planting shrubs, learned plumbing by watching YouTube videos, and calling in favors from contractors I'd met through the hardware store. Figured out basic electrical work the same way. Made mistakes, plenty of them, but learned from each one. The first faucet I installed leaked for 3 days before I figured out I'd forgotten a washer. The first light switch I wired was backwards. But by the end, I could handle most basic home repairs competently. Also learned about permits, inspections, and the million small details that separate amateur landlords from professional property managers. Discovered that the city required specific permits for certain electrical work. Found out that rental properties needed specific safety features like hardwired smoke detectors. Every regulation felt like an obstacle designed to stop people like me, but I treated each one as a lesson in how to do things right. When I finished, the place looked completely transformed. Fresh paint, updated fixtures, refinished floors, landscaped yard, had it professionally appraised, and it came back at $89,000. I'd essentially created $44,000 in equity through 6 months of sweat and about $15,000 in materials and permits. Listed it for rent at $1,200 per month. Got 14 applications in the first week. Selected a young couple, both teachers, stable income, excellent references, no red flags. The rent covered my mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance fund with about $200 left over each month. That surplus went straight into savings for the next property. But more importantly, I'd proved I could do this. That first property wasn't just about money. It was about demonstrating that I could take something broken and make it valuable, that I could build something real with my own hands and intelligence. The second property came 8 months later. Another foreclosure, this one a duplex. Same process. Research, calculate, renovate, rent. This time the work went faster because I knew what I was doing. By the end of that renovation, I could tile a bathroom, install a toilet, wire a ceiling fan, and patch drywall better than half the contractors I'd met. Third property was a small single-family home that needed major work. The previous owner had started gutting the kitchen, then apparently just gave up. I spent 3 months finishing what they'd started, learning cabinet installation and countertop work along the way. Each property taught me something new. Each renovation made me more competent. Each successful rental proved I could do this professionally. By 26, I owned 3 rental properties. By 28, I had 7. By 30, I was running a small real estate investment company, with 15 properties generating consistent monthly income. I'd built something real from nothing, using the same stubbornness my family used to hate about me. During those years, my family made sporadic attempts to contact me. Mom would call on holidays, leaving messages about healing family wounds and letting go of past hurt. Haley found me on social media, sending messages about how much she'd grown and how sorry she was. I ignored all of it. Not out of spite exactly, but because I genuinely had nothing to say to them. They belonged to a life I'd left behind. I'd moved so far past that version of myself that engaging with them felt like trying to have a conversation with strangers about someone else's problems. Then Walter got sick. Cancer. Stage 3 when they found it. He was 72 and stubborn as hell, insisting on minimal treatment so he could die on his own terms, instead of wasting away in some hospital. I moved back into his house to take care of him during those final months. That's when my family made their move. Mom showed up at Walter's house one afternoon while I was at work. She'd found out through some distant cousin that Walter was dying. Probably figured this was her chance to reconnect while I was vulnerable. Walter, bless him, met her at the door and didn't let her inside. "Patricia," he said coldly, "you got some nerve showing up here after what you did to that boy." "I'm his mother," she replied, trying to sound hurt. "I have a right to see my son." "You gave up that right when you chose your daughter's fantasy over your son's reality. Blake doesn't want to see you. Now get off my property before I call the police." She left, but not before leaving a letter. Walter gave it to me that evening. I almost threw it away unread, but something made me open it. The letter was a masterpiece of manipulation. 3 pages of how she'd always loved both children equally, how she'd been doing her best in difficult circumstances, how Haley had really changed and was now working hard to become independent. No actual apology, just explanations and justifications wrapped in victim language. The kicker was the last paragraph. "We're having financial difficulties right now. Your father's overtime got cut, and Haley's been struggling to find stable employment. We could really use your help. I know you've been doing well in real estate. Maybe you could give us some advice or help with a loan? Family helps family, Blake. That's what we do." There it was. The real reason for the sudden interest in reconciliation. They needed money. I showed the letter to Walter. He read it, then handed it back with a disgusted shake of his head. "They haven't changed at all," he said. "Still using people. Still refusing to take responsibility. Still expecting you to fix their problems." "I know. What are you going to do?" "Nothing," I said. "Absolutely nothing." Walter smiled. "That's my boy." He passed away 3 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep. Left me everything. The house, his savings, his old truck. The will included a note. "Blake, you were the grandson I was proud to claim, and the son my boy never learned to be. Use this foundation to build something beautiful. Don't let them pull you back down." The funeral was small. Me, a few of Walter's old friends, Dad. Mom and Haley didn't come. They weren't invited. Dad looked terrible. Older than ever, hollow-eyed. He approached me after the service. "I'm sorry," he said. "About everything. About being too weak to stand up to your mother. About letting Haley manipulate all of us. About not being the father you deserved." I studied him for a long moment. The anger I'd expected to feel wasn't there. Just a sort of detached pity for this man who'd wasted years of his life enabling dysfunction. "You can't fix the past, Dennis," I told him. "But you can stop repeating it in the future." "I'm getting divorced," he said suddenly. "Filed papers last week. I should have done it years ago, but I kept thinking things would get better. They never did." "Good," I said. "Maybe now you can figure out who you actually are instead of who Patricia wanted you to be." We didn't hug or have some tearful reconciliation, just nodded at each other like business acquaintances and went our separate ways. But something had shifted. Dad was finally making a choice instead of just accepting whatever happened to him. Inheriting Walter's house gave me the capital I needed to expand the business. I sold the property for $180,000 and used the proceeds to buy a small apartment complex. 8 units that needed significant work but had solid bones. Spent a year renovating, then filled them with quality tenants at market rates. The business grew. By 32, I was managing 43 properties across 3 counties. By 35, I'd expanded into commercial real estate, small office buildings, retail strips, even a small warehouse complex. Each acquisition was carefully researched, conservatively financed, and managed with the same attention to detail I'd learned from that first foreclosure. The key was treating tenants like people instead of revenue sources. I responded to maintenance requests within 24 hours, kept properties in excellent condition, charged fair market rates instead of squeezing every possible dollar, built a reputation as a landlord people actually wanted to rent from. Word spread. My vacancy rates were consistently below 5% when the market average was 12 to 15%. I also started mentoring other young investors, people who reminded me of myself at 24, hungry, determined, but without the knowledge or connections to get started. I'd meet them for coffee, review their business plans, sometimes even partner with them on their first deals. Watching someone succeed using the principles Walter taught me felt like honoring his legacy in the most meaningful way possible. The investment company itself became profitable beyond just rental income. I'd find distressed properties, renovate them efficiently, then either hold them for rental income or sell them to other investors at market rates. The company developed a reputation for taking on challenging projects that others avoided. Weird layouts, code violations, difficult locations. I'd figured out that problems others saw as deal breakers were actually opportunities if you knew how to solve them systematically. Revenue hit 7 figures annually when I was 33. Not bad for someone who'd left home at 23 with $500 in a duffel bag. Somewhere along the way, I'd become legitimately wealthy. Not private jet rich, but comfortable in a way my parents never were despite their constant striving to appear successful. The difference was I'd built something real, while they'd been maintaining appearances on credit cards and overtime. I also met Natalie. She was a real estate attorney handling the closing on one of my commercial properties, a small office building I was converting to mixed-use retail space. The previous owner had gotten tangled up in code violations and was selling at a loss just to escape the headache. I saw potential where they saw problems. Natalie walked into our first meeting wearing a sharp suit and carrying a briefcase that looked like it weighed more than she did. She was direct, efficient, with exactly zero patience for nonsense. Within 5 minutes, she'd identified 3 potential issues with the title that the previous attorney had missed. Within 10 minutes, she'd outlined solutions for all 3. "You actually read the whole contract," I said, impressed. "Most attorneys just skimmed the standard stuff." "That's literally my job," she replied, without looking up from her notes. "You'd be surprised how many people pay me to do things they could do themselves if they just read the documents." We ended up grabbing coffee after the closing. She suggested it, said she liked working with investors who actually understood what they were buying instead of just chasing money. We talked for 2 hours about real estate, market trends, and property law. She'd grown up in a trailer park, put herself through law school working 3 jobs, and had exactly zero patience for people who made excuses instead of making progress. "My mom always said I should find a nice, stable man to take care of me," Natalie mentioned during one of our early dates. She meant it as advice. I took it as a warning about what not to do. We clicked immediately. 2 people who'd both built themselves from nothing and understood that success wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about building something real that couldn't be taken away. She also understood family dysfunction in ways most people couldn't. Her father had been an addict who drained the family savings multiple times before disappearing when she was 12. Her mother had spent years making excuses for him, choosing loyalty to a destructive man over protection of her kids. Natalie had learned early, same as me, that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you are actually the ones holding you back. "You know what I love about real estate?" she said one evening while reviewing contracts at my kitchen table. "Buildings don't lie. They don't manipulate. They don't make excuses. Either the foundation is solid or it isn't. Either the structure is sound or it isn't. Everything is measurable, fixable, improvable. Wish people worked the same way." We dated for a year before I proposed. Nothing fancy, just the 2 of us at the first property I'd ever renovated, standing in the living room where I'd spent 6 months learning how to build something from broken pieces. I told her that was exactly what she'd helped me do with my life. Take someone broken and help them become whole without trying to change who they fundamentally were. She said yes before I finished the question. We got married 2 years later at a small venue that held exactly 50 people. Small ceremony, close friends only. No family drama, no performance, no pretense. Just 2 people who understood each other committing to building something together. Dad came, which surprised me. He'd fully divorced Patricia by then and was dating someone named Claire who actually treated him like an equal. He looked healthier than I'd seen him in years, like decades of weight had been lifted off his shoulders. "I'm proud of you," he told me at the reception. Walter would be too. Thanks. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he continued, but I want you to know I'm trying to be better. To do better. I can see that, I said, and I meant it. Around this time, I got an unexpected message on social media from Haley. Unlike the previous attempts at contact, this one was different. No excuses, no manipulation, just a straightforward message. Blake, I know I don't deserve a response, but I wanted you to know I've been working on myself. Got a job at a restaurant? Been there 2 years now. Started as a hostess, worked up to shift manager. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work, and I'm proud of it. I'm sorry for everything. You don't have to forgive me or even respond. I just needed you to know that I finally understand what you've known all along. That real worth comes from what you build, not what you're given. I didn't respond immediately. Showed it to Natalie, who read it carefully. What do you think? She asked. I think people can change, I said. But I also think time will tell if it's real or just another performance. Fair. 6 months later, Haley messaged again, this time with photos of her working at the restaurant. A simple apartment she'd rented on her own. A small savings account she'd built up. No requests, no manipulation, just evidence of a life she was building without anyone's help. I responded with a single line, proud of you for doing the work. Her reply came hours later. Thank you, that means more than you know. We didn't become close, didn't have tearful reunions or pretend the past didn't matter, but we established a distant respect. Two people who shared DNA and trauma, acknowledging each other's existence without demanding anything. As for Mom, I heard through the family grapevine that she was living in a small apartment after the divorce, working as a receptionist, still telling anyone who'd listen about her ungrateful children who'd abandoned her. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that she'd ended up doing the same type of work Haley had started with, except Haley had used it as a foundation to grow, while Patricia used it as proof of victimhood. Last year, I decided to honor Walter's memory by opening a community center in the neighborhood where he'd lived his entire adult life. The building was a former warehouse that had been sitting empty for 3 years. Owner had died, heirs couldn't agree on what to do with it, eventually sold it just to stop paying taxes on vacant property. I bought it for $180,000, then spent another $400,000 on renovations. The space was massive, 12,000 square feet of potential. We gutted it completely, bringing it up to modern building codes while preserving the original exposed brick and timber beams that gave it character. Created a computer lab with 20 workstations running current software. Built 4 private tutoring rooms where kids could get one-on-one help with homework. Designed a large multi-purpose room that could host everything from job training workshops to community meetings. Added a commercial kitchen and small restaurant space where people could get affordable meals. Nothing fancy, just good food at prices that wouldn't break someone's budget. The restaurant was Natalie's idea. She'd pointed out that lots of families in that neighborhood were food insecure, but free meals came with stigma. Charging $1 for a plate of food let people maintain dignity while still getting help. Smart woman, my wife. Spent 8 months on the renovation, managing contractors and doing much of the work myself when I could. The building transformed from an abandoned eyesore into something the neighborhood could be proud of. Named it the Walter Foundation, after the man who taught me that success meant building ladders for others to climb, not pulling them up behind you. At the grand opening ceremony, over 200 people showed up. Local families, business owners, city council members who'd helped fast-track our permits. The computer lab was already booked solid for the next month. 3 local teachers had volunteered to run free tutoring sessions. The restaurant had applications from 5 people wanting to work there, all from the neighborhood. Dad came with Claire, Haley came with her boyfriend and their baby son Owen. She'd named him after Walter's middle name. Natalie's family filled the room. Friends from over the years, business associates, people from the neighborhood who'd watched the renovation happen. I stood at the front of the room, looking out at faces that actually cared, and realized something profound. I'd built this. Not just the building, not just the business, not just the wealth. I'd built a life surrounded by people who chose to be there, who showed up, who gave without expecting anything back. During my speech, I talked about Walter and what he'd taught me about resilience, self-respect, and the difference between family you're born into and family you choose. Walter once told me that the best revenge isn't proving people wrong, I said. It's proving yourself right. He showed me that when people try to make you small, you don't shrink to fit their expectations. You grow until you outgrow them completely. The room was silent, people actually listening. Some people will try to dim your light because it makes their darkness visible. They'll try to convince you that you're nothing because your something threatens their everything. But when you choose yourself, when you refuse to shrink for someone else's comfort, you don't just save yourself, You show others that they can choose themselves too. I looked at Dad, who had tears in his eyes. At Haley, who was holding Owen and nodding. At Natalie, who understood better than anyone what it took to build something real from broken pieces. Walter chose to reach out to an invisible kid. Dennis chose divorce over continuing the lie. Haley chose work over manipulation. And I chose to leave a house that was never a home to build something real. That's what this foundation represents. The idea that it's never too late to choose differently. The applause filled the room, but I wasn't quite finished. I want to end with this, I said. The real gift Patricia gave me, without meaning to, was showing me exactly what not to be. By denying me birthday celebrations, she taught me to celebrate myself every day. By telling me I was nothing, she motivated me to become something. By erasing me from family photos, she freed me to paint my own portrait. Dad stood up, something he never would have done years ago. That's my son, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. That's my boy in every way that matters. The party continued late into the night. Haley left early to put Owen to bed, but not before hugging me. A real hug without agenda or manipulation. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me it was possible to change. You did that yourself, I told her. I just stopped enabling the alternative. Dad stayed until the end, helping clean up like a volunteer rather than expecting to be served. As we stacked chairs together, he said something that stayed with me. I wasted 20 years being afraid of your mother's anger, afraid of making waves, afraid of standing up for what was right. The funny part is, once I finally did it, I realized the only thing I should have been afraid of was wasting more time being afraid. Better late than never, I said. Still, he replied, looking at the empty room that would soon be filled with kids learning and growing. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough when it counted, when you needed me to be. We can't change the past, I told him. But you're here now. That counts for something. As Natalie and I locked up that night, she took my hand and said something I'll never forget. You know what the best revenge really is? It's not success or money or even happiness. It's indifference. Patricia is out there somewhere, still angry, still bitter, still blaming everyone else. But you've moved so far past her that she's not even a footnote in your story anymore. She's just a catalyst that started a reaction she couldn't control. She was right. I rarely thought about Patricia anymore. When I did, it was with the kind of detached curiosity you might have about a stranger's problems. Her hold over me had dissolved completely, replaced by the solid foundation of real relationships and earned success. Looking back now, getting banned from my own birthday was the greatest gift my toxic family ever gave me. It forced me to stop waiting for them to celebrate my existence and start celebrating it myself. It taught me that you can't earn love from people who see your success as their failure. And most importantly, it showed me that sometimes the best way to honor where you came from is to become everything they tried to prevent you from being. I'm 37 now. Natalie and I have 2 kids who are growing up in a house where birthdays are celebrated, achievements are recognized, and love isn't conditional on being better than someone else. Haley brings Owen over for Sunday dinners, where he plays with his cousins and learns that family gatherings can be about joy rather than judgment. Dad is an active grandfather, the kind he never got to be before. He still apologizes sometimes for the lost years, but I tell him the same thing every time. We can't change the past, but we can choose the future. As for Patricia, I heard through distant relatives that she's still at that receptionist job, still telling anyone who'll listen about her ungrateful children who abandoned her. The difference between her and Haley is stark. Haley chose growth while Patricia chose victimhood. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Story 2. My dad cut me off for staying with my daughter in the ICU, instead of setting up my sister's engagement party, so I ended it with them too. Hey Reddit, my family treated me like their personal handyman and wallet for years. I finally said enough, focused on my daughter, and cut them off. Thought that was the end of it, but they had other plans. Before we get there, let me start from the beginning. I'm Nate Halpern. I'm 36, a high school physics teacher, and a single dad. My wife, Lila, passed away the day our daughter was born. Since then, it's been just me and Maya. She's 12 now. Smart, sarcastic, and obsessed with space. My family? Complicated. My parents, Gerald and Elaine, still think respect means doing whatever they say. My younger sister Clara has been their favorite since birth. I've spent most of my life being the responsible one. That morning, the hallway outside the ICU felt like another planet. Quiet, cold, full of machines humming behind closed doors. Nurses moved past like ghosts, calm but busy. I'd been there all night. Maya had been admitted with a severe asthma attack that turned into something worse. They said respiratory failure and critical condition, and my brain just stopped keeping time. After that, I sat against the wall, watching the monitor through the glass. The beeping was steady now. Earlier, it had been chaos. I whispered her breathing counts under my breath. Inhale, exhale, like keeping score might help her somehow. My coffee was cold. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. That's when my phone buzzed again. Third time that morning. I didn't even need to check. It was my dad. I let it ring twice, then answered, "Yeah?" His voice came sharp, like he was already mid-argument. "Nate, I've been calling. You didn't answer." "I'm at the hospital," I said. "Maya's in the ICU." "I know," he said. "And I'm sorry, but we need to talk about Clara's engagement party. It's tomorrow. We're setting up today, and your mother can't lift everything herself. You were supposed to cover the catering." I thought maybe I'd misheard him. "Dad, she's on life support." "I'm aware," he said flat. "But family obligations don't just disappear. Clara's worked hard for this, and your mother's a wreck trying to get things ready." I stared at the floor tile, trying to process that someone could say those words out loud. "I can't leave," I said. "She's critical. I'm not leaving my kid to hang streamers." He sighed. That long, irritated sigh I'd known my whole life. "You always have an excuse. Every time the family needs something, you vanish. You think you're better than everyone because you've got your little job and your tragic story." My voice stayed level. "You called me while my daughter's fighting to breathe. What did you think I'd say?" "You could have said yes," he snapped. "You could have shown up. You think you're the only one with problems?" I didn't answer right away. The silence stretched. I could hear someone down the hall crying softly, a monitor beeping faster, a nurse saying, "Clear." Everything in me was tired. "I'm not discussing this," I said finally. "If you can't show up for family," he said, his voice turning hard, "don't expect family to show up for you." "Do whatever you need to do," I told him. My tone surprised even me, calm, like the words weren't heavy at all. He paused, then said it, "Then you're cut off." I waited a second, mostly to see if he'd say anything human after that. He didn't. "Good," I said, and hung up. No yelling, no lecture, just done. For a few seconds I sat there, staring at my reflection in the phone screen, like someone had finally stopped a noise that had been playing for years. I opened my contacts, scrolled to his name, and hit block. Then I did the same for the house number a nurse walked by and smiled politely. I nodded back, slipped the phone into my pocket and stood. My legs felt stiff, but steady. Through the ICU window, Maya was small under all those wires. Her hair pulled back with a hospital clip, her face pale but peaceful. Machines breathed for her in slow rhythm, the sound steady and almost hypnotic. I went back in, took her hand, and sat down beside her. Her fingers were warm now. They'd been cold when we got here. The doctor had said she was stable, but every beep still felt like a held breath. I brushed her hair away from her forehead and whispered, "You're not alone, kiddo. I'm right here." She didn't move, but I kept talking anyway. About the stars she loved, the school project she'd been working on, the dumb sci-fi movie we hadn't finished. I talked until my voice steadied again. I leaned back in the chair, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, and felt the first clean breath I'd taken in years. When the adrenaline wore off, my mind started digging through old memories, like it was trying to make sense of how I ended up here, sitting in a hospital room, alone, with my father's voice still echoing in my head. I guess it started early. When I was 12, helping out in our house didn't mean chores or taking out trash. It meant doing the things my dad didn't want to. If the lawnmower broke, I fixed it. If the gutters overflowed, I climbed up there. If mom needed groceries, I biked across town and carried them home in my backpack. There was no asking. It was just expected. When I turned 16, I got my first job at a gas station. I thought I'd finally have my own money. 2 weeks later, Dad asked for half of my paycheck for bills. That half never stopped being half. By 18, I was paying the water bill because he forgot. At 20, I was fixing his truck on weekends and covering my sister's late rent because she just needed a few days. Clara was 7 years younger and the complete opposite of me. Where I was the one doing repairs, she was the one being rescued. If she crashed a car, Dad paid for the tow and blamed the road. If she failed a class, Mom said the teacher was too hard on her. If she cried, the whole house froze until she smiled again. When I confronted her once about her spending, she laughed, "You're just jealous that people like helping me." That line stuck for years. My mom had her own version of control, emotional guilt wrapped in kindness. Whenever I tried to say no, she'd say, "You're the only one we can count on." If I didn't help, she'd get quiet for days, banging pots around the kitchen, or sighing loud enough for me to hear from my room. It was never yelling. It was disappointment. And somehow that hurt worse. So I learned early, saying yes kept the peace. Saying no made me the problem. When I married Lila, things shifted for a bit. She saw how my family operated and called it what it was. They don't want help, Nate, she said once. They want control. I didn't believe her back then. I thought being dependable was just who I was. Then Maya was born, and Lila never came home from the hospital that day. Everything changed again. At first, my parents acted like they wanted to support me. They moved in for a few weeks to help with the baby. It took about 3 days before the criticism started. My dad told me I was holding Maya wrong. My mom said I wasn't washing bottles right. Every suggestion came with a tone, like I was already failing. When I asked them to give me some space, they called me ungrateful. We lost Lila too, my mom said. You don't get to push us out. I let them stay longer than I should have, partly because I was scared, partly because I was exhausted. But the longer they stayed, the clearer it became. They weren't there for me or for Maya. They were there to feel needed. Eventually, I told them to leave. My dad took it as a betrayal. My mom cried for an hour and said, "You'll regret this when she's older." They didn't visit again for months, and when they did, it was like an inspection. Every time they came by, they'd look around the apartment like they were grading it. "You still haven't fixed that faucet?" Or "Maya's too thin." They called it concern. I called it control with manners. When Maya started school, they'd offer help. Rides, money for supplies, babysitting. Every single time, it came with strings. If I took the money, I'd hear about it for months. If I said no, I was too proud. After a while, I just stopped answering when they called. It didn't stop them from showing up anyway. Now, sitting by Maya's bed, I saw it all clearly. Every time they said family, what they meant was obligation. Every time they said help, they meant hold still while we take over. And I let it happen for years, because I thought that's what good sons do. The nurse walked in and adjusted one of the monitors. Maya's numbers looked better. Small progress, but progress. I thanked the nurse, and when she left, I sat back and looked at my daughter's face. Even with the tubes and wires, she looked calm, stronger than I felt most days. I realized something right then. My parents never taught me what love looked like. They taught me what usefulness looked like. Love to them was measured in favors, in obedience, in how much I could give before breaking. But Maya wasn't going to learn that. Not from me. I reached over, touched her hand gently, and said, "You're not here to fix anyone, kiddo. You're just here to live." Her fingers twitched. Small, almost nothing. But enough I leaned back in the chair and let the thought settle. I wasn't raised to be loved. I was raised to serve. But that ends here. Around noon next morning, I checked my phone for the first time since the argument with my father. 32 missed messages lit up the screen. All from the family group chat. Halpern family, with a sunflower emoji Clara had added years ago. I opened it. Mom had sent a long list of items for Clara's engagement party. Tablecloths, candles. Remember to bring the folding chairs from your garage. Clara replied with photos of decorations, asking which color balloons matched better with her theme. Someone else dropped a playlist link, and Dad had written, "We'll need the truck by 3. Nate, don't be late." I scrolled through it twice, reading the comments like they belonged to strangers. Not one of them had asked about Maya. Not one message even mentioned her name. I typed slowly, "Maya is in ICU. I'm not coming. Don't ask me for money. Don't contact me unless it's about her." I stared at it for a few seconds before hitting send. The 3 dots popped up instantly. Mom replied first, "Your grandmother would be heartbroken if she saw how cold you've become." Then Clara, "Seriously, you're ruining my weekend. This is supposed to be my happy time." Dad came next. "Grow up and stop making everything about you." The dots blinked again. Another cousin chimed in with, "Wow, family is family, man." Another aunt wrote, "You can't stay mad forever." The flood kept coming. Paragraphs, guilt, old stories twisted into proof that I was selfish. I didn't reply. I turned the phone face down on the table and sat back. The screen kept lighting up, buzzing over and over, like it refused to accept silence. When it finally stopped, I muted the group for a year. For the first time, there was nothing I needed to explain. After that, I went into my email and started cutting off every old tie I could think of. Joint account with my parents from years ago. Closed autopay connections on cards Clara used for emergencies. Canceled. Passwords changed, every one of them. Each click felt cleaner. While I worked through it, a nurse came in to check Maya's vitals. "She's improving," she said. "Her oxygen levels are steady." I nodded and thanked her. The nurse smiled and left. I looked at Maya's hand resting on the blanket. Her fingers twitched every now and then, small movements that reminded me she was still fighting. I whispered, "We're okay, kiddo. They can throw their party. We're staying right here." I leaned back and thought about how my whole life had been noise. Constant calls, demands, guilt, people pretending it was love while draining every ounce of peace I had. The noise had filled every space until I didn't even realize how tired I was. Now that it was gone, it felt strange, like walking out of a crowded room into open air, light but unfamiliar. I checked the window. It was starting to snow outside, soft flakes sticking to the glass. I remembered when Maya was 6, catching snowflakes on her gloves and saying, "Each one is different, Dad, like fingerprints but colder." That memory hit hard. She had always been observant, sharp in ways most adults missed. I reached for her tablet from the nightstand and queued up one of her favorite space documentaries, letting the narrator's calm voice fill the room. "In the silence of space," it began, "everything moves, but nothing makes a sound." I let that line sit. My phone buzzed again. A text from Clara, outside the group chat this time. "You're being dramatic. Mom's crying now. You could have just said you're busy." I didn't even open it fully. I just blocked her number, same as my dad's. Blocking them didn't touch the family group chat, but it kept my phone quiet. They could spin whatever story they wanted for once. I didn't care how they told it. I turned my focus back to Maya. The steady rhythm of her breathing matched the slow pulse on the monitor. The lines moved across the screen like quiet proof of life. For years, I'd been trained to measure my worth by how much I could give. Money, time, patience, silence. All of it traded for the illusion of peace. Now I was sitting here in a hospital chair, broken all the usual ways, but finally free in one. The next afternoon, Maya was stable enough that I could finally breathe without counting the seconds between her heart monitor beeps. The doctor said she was responding well. For the first time in days, I let myself believe she might be okay. I just stepped out to grab a cup of coffee from the vending machine when I saw my father walking down the hall. He wasn't supposed to be there. His shoulders were squared, that same heavy stride that used to fill every doorway when I was a kid. My mother followed a few steps behind, clutching her purse like it might help her case. He didn't even look around for a nurse or check-in counter. He walked straight toward me. "Nate," he said, loud enough for half the hallway to hear, "we need to talk." I didn't move. "You shouldn't be here." It was the day before Clara's party. He'd come to force the issue. He stopped a few feet away, eyes locked on mine. "You blocked my number. That's childish. You think cutting everyone off makes you a good father?" I glanced at the nurse station. 2 of them were pretending not to look. "This isn't the place," I said. "Maya's resting." "This is exactly the place," he shot back. "You embarrassed your family in that group chat. You humiliated your mother, your sister." "I told the truth," I said. "That's not humiliation. That's clarity." He stepped closer. "You're talking like a stranger. Since when do you act like you're too good for us?" I kept my tone even. "Since you made me choose between my daughter and your party." His jaw tightened. "Don't twist my words. You've always been dramatic. One little request." "One little request?" I cut him off. "She's 12. She was hooked up to a ventilator, and you called to ask about decorations." He waved a hand like it was nothing. "You make it sound worse than it is. Your sister's engagement." "Stop," I said. He didn't. "You think you're some kind of martyr because you're raising a kid alone? You've let that define you for too long. Everyone loses people, Nate." The hallway went quieter. I felt my pulse spike. "Don't talk about her," I said. He folded his arms. "Lila isn't here anymore, and hiding behind her memory doesn't make you righteous." That was it. The line. The one he didn't get to cross. I stepped closer until we were eye to eye. My voice dropped low. "You don't speak her name again? Not here? Not ever?" For a second, he didn't react. Then I saw it. The quick flash of something like uncertainty. He tried to recover with a scoff. "You threatening me now?" "No," I said. "I'm setting a boundary. You're leaving. Now." He glanced past me toward Maya's room. "You're really going to throw me out? In front of everyone?" "Yes." He stared at me, searching for the part of me that used to fold. When he didn't find it, he tried a softer angle. "You've changed," he said. "Your mother's been sick about this." Mom stepped forward, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "We just wanted to see her, Nate. You can't keep us away forever. She's our granddaughter." "She's my daughter," I said. "And she's not a prop for family forgiveness." Mom's expression cracked for a second, then reset into disappointment. "You don't mean that." "I mean every word." Dad's tone shifted again, from guilt to command. If you walk away from your family, don't expect us back when you need help. I gave him a look I'd practiced in silence for years. I've never needed your help. You needed mine. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Behind him, a nurse started walking toward us. Probably to diffuse whatever she thought was happening, I held up a hand to let her know it was fine. My father saw the gesture and straightened his coat. You're going to regret this. Maybe, I said, but not today. I turned toward my mother. Go home, Mom. She's still recovering. This isn't good for her. She hesitated. You're really doing this? I'm really doing this. Dad muttered something under his breath, then turned and walked away. Mom followed, glancing back once before catching up to him. When they were gone, the nurse came over. You okay? I'm fine, I said. Sorry about that. She nodded. Happens more than you think. I waited until they disappeared down the hall before walking back into Maya's room. I sat down beside her and took her hand. Her fingers curled slightly around mine, instinct more than anything. For years, I'd mistaken submission for peace, thinking staying quiet kept things from breaking, but it only made the cracks deeper. Now, with them gone, I didn't feel relief exactly. It was something else, a stillness that didn't ask for permission. I looked at her sleeping face and said quietly, I didn't win, kiddo. I just stopped losing. By the end of the week, Maya was breathing on her own again. No tubes, no oxygen mask, just her, sleeping under a thin hospital blanket, her chest rising steady and slow. The doctor said she'd probably be discharged in a few days if she kept improving. That was the only thing that mattered. I'd been living on vending machine coffee and 4 hours of sleep a night, but I didn't care. Every good report felt like a win. The first sign of fallout came 2 mornings later. A coworker texted me a screenshot from Facebook. My dad had posted some long paragraph about being betrayed by your own blood and losing trust in someone who was supposed to lead the family. My name wasn't in it, but it didn't need to be. Half the comments were people writing, Stay strong, Gerald. Mom added her own post that afternoon. A photo of her and Clara hugging at the engagement party setup with a caption about leaning on those who still believe in family. Then Clara made her move. On her Instagram story, she posted, Some people forget who fed them when they were hungry. But that's okay. God sees everything. I didn't even have to scroll to know they were all talking about me. I set the phone down, stared out the window at the parking lot below, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a kind of distance. Like watching strangers reenact something I used to be part of. That evening, I got the first email alert. A declined transaction on an old credit card, one that was supposed to be inactive. Then another. $230 at a party supply store. Then $600 from a catering service. Those vendors still had my old number saved in their profiles, so they tried to run it. I called the bank right away. The woman on the line pulled up my account. It looks like someone tried to use your previous card, she said. Do you recognize the merchant? Yeah, I said. Unfortunately, I do. She asked if I wanted to press charges. I told her no. Just shut everything down. We went through my recent activity and flagged every recurring charge. The rep read out the merchants. I wrote them down. The bank shut the card and blocked new charges. After we hung up, I called each company myself, removed my name from the utility account, closed the gas card autopay, and canceled the Costco auto renew. Each click felt cleaner. When the call ended, the rep said, All secure now, Mr. Halpern. You're good to go. For a second, that sentence felt bigger than she probably meant it to. The next day, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You didn't have to go nuclear. You're embarrassing us. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, another one. Dad said you locked the family out of accounts. He's furious. I blocked the number. By Friday, the rumors had started making their way through extended family. My aunt sent a message saying, Your parents told us you drained their savings. I told her that was impossible, considering I never had access to their savings. She replied, I don't want to be in the middle of this. That was fine by me. I stopped checking social media after that. Every time I opened an app, there was some half-truth being shared like it was gospel. They were painting me as cold, ungrateful, selfish. I'd spent most of my life trying to avoid being called those things now. Hearing them didn't even sting. At night, when Maya slept, I sat in the chair by her bed and wrote down every account, every login, every payment detail I needed to fix. It was boring work, but it gave me focus. Something solid. I canceled the family phone plan that was still in my name. I called the utility company and removed myself from the house account I hadn't lived in for over a decade. I changed my email passwords, my recovery numbers, even my Amazon login. One by one, I closed every door they used to walk through without knocking. The nurse who'd been on shift all week stopped by with fresh linens. "She's lucky to have a dad like you," she said, nodding toward Maya. I smiled. "I think I'm the lucky one." When she left, I sat back down, stretched my legs, and let my head rest against the chair. For the first time, there was no buzzing phone, no guilt sitting on my chest. Maya stirred, half awake. "Dad," she whispered. "I'm here," I said. Her eyes opened a little. "Are we going home soon?" "Yeah," I told her. "Soon." She smiled weakly. "Can we get pancakes first?" I laughed, softly, so I wouldn't set off the monitor. "Yeah, kiddo, pancakes first." She drifted back to sleep. I watched her for a long time, the steady rise and fall of her breathing. Every sound in that room was predictable. The monitor beep, the air vent, the faint hum of fluorescent lights. After months of noise from people who never listened, this kind of predictability felt like peace. My family could say whatever they wanted. They could twist every story until it looked like I was the villain. But the truth was simple. I wasn't reacting anymore. I looked at Maya, safe and still, and realized silence wasn't loneliness. It was freedom. A week later, the doctors signed the discharge papers, and Maya came home. The apartment felt unfamiliar, like we were moving back into our own lives after being gone too long. The air smelled different. Real air, not the sterile kind that hummed through hospital vents. She walked in slowly, still a little pale, a fingertip pulse oximeter clipped to her finger. "Home," she said quietly. Then louder. "Home." I smiled. "Yeah, finally." We unpacked her things first. The stack of get well cards from her classmates, her stuffed astronaut, the blanket one of the nurses gave her. I cleaned while she rested on the couch, then made soup, the kind she liked with tiny alphabet noodles. That first night, she insisted on sleeping in her own bed. I checked her pulse oximeter more than I needed to, but she didn't mind. "You're like a security system," she said, half asleep. "Yeah," I said, "one that doesn't turn off." The next morning, sunlight came through the blinds, and for the first time, it didn't feel like another day to survive. It just felt like a day. We fell into a routine again. Simple stuff. Breakfast, meds, a slow walk outside, homework spread across the table. She drew planets on her math worksheets. I let her. On Wednesday, I went back to work for a few hours. My students surprised me. A welcome back note taped to the whiteboard. Jokes written in the corners. The principal told me to take it slow. I told him I planned to. That afternoon, Maya and I made pancakes again, this time shaped like stars. She laughed when one fell apart. "It's a supernova," she said. She was right. The calm didn't last long before someone tried to interrupt it. Friday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it buzzed again. This time, I answered. "Mr. Halpern," a familiar voice said. "This is Pastor Tom." Of course it was. "Your parents asked me to check in. They're worried about you and Maya." I kept my tone polite. "We're fine, Pastor. Thanks for calling." He hesitated. "They didn't mean to upset you, Nate. Family can get—" "I know what family can get," I said. "I appreciate your concern, but we're good. Would you like me to tell them that?" "Please do." I hung up before he could say more. For the rest of the day, my phone stayed silent. It felt like progress. That evening, Maya and I sat on the couch watching a nature documentary. Halfway through, she leaned her head on my shoulder. The next interruption came 2 days later. A text from Clara, from a different number, Ryan's phone. "Hey, I know things are weird. Ryan and I could use some help this month. Rent's tight, just till we get on track." I read it twice. Then I typed back, "I'm not your bank. I'm your brother. There's a difference." She saw it instantly. "You don't have to be mean," she replied. "Not being mean," I wrote. "Just done." When she fired back, I blocked Ryan's number too. I set the phone face down and didn't touch it again. After that, the quiet settled in like furniture that finally belonged in the room. Maya started sketching again. Rockets, comets, even a few robots. We went on short walks after dinner, her hand in mine, the air cool but not cold. She talked about her science fair project like it was a classified mission. I listened to every word. One night, while she was drawing at the table, I opened my laptop to an email from the school district. They needed someone to lead the regional physics competition team this year. I almost said no out of habit, then changed my mind. I replied yes. When I told Maya, her eyes lit up. "You're gonna win," she said. I laughed. "It's not about winning. Everything's about winning," she said. "Even peace." She went back to drawing like she hadn't just said something smarter than most adults I know. The following week was uneventful in the best possible way. Work, cooking, homework, sleep. No unexpected phone calls, no guilt trips, no accounts mysteriously reopened. Just normal. I fixed the wobbly kitchen chair I'd been ignoring for months. I replaced the light bulb in the hallway. Maya teased me for finally doing chores. "You're on a roll," she said. "Don't jinx it," I told her. Sunday night, we made tacos and watched a movie halfway through. She fell asleep against my arm, her breathing steady and soft. I muted the TV and just sat there. It hit me then. This was what peace actually looked like. Not some grand moment or perfect ending. Just small things that didn't hurt. 3 weeks passed without a single text, call, or rumor. The quiet stayed steady, and I got used to it. Maya was back in school, healthy, full of jokes again. The apartment finally felt like ours. No ghosts, no noise, just life. It was a Saturday morning when the knock came. 3 short taps, then silence. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, Gerald and Elaine were standing there. My dad in a pressed flannel like he was trying to look casual. My mom clutching a small box wrapped in silver paper. They both looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but in presence. Before I could say anything, Maya came running from the living room. "Grandma! Grandpa!" Her voice was so bright it knocked the air out of me. She hugged them both before I could react. My first instinct was to tell them to leave, to protect the peace I'd built. But seeing her face, that kind of pure excitement, I couldn't do it. I stepped aside. 5 minutes, I said. She just got over being sick. Dad nodded. That's fair. They walked in slowly, like they were afraid to break something. She motioned for them to sit, but Dad stayed standing. Mom handed her the box. "This is for you," she said softly. Maya tore the paper open, and her eyes widened. "It's the telescope, the one from the catalog." She turned it around in her hands like it was a treasure. "Dad, look!" I looked. It was the same model she'd shown me online months ago, the one I told her we'd save up for after the hospital bills. She hugged both of them again before running to her room to find a spot for it. The silence that followed was heavy, but not hostile. Dad cleared his throat. "We didn't come to fight." "Good," I said. He nodded once, slow. "I've had time to think." I pushed too hard. I thought keeping control meant keeping the family together. Mom added, "We only wanted to help, but we made it worse. I miss her. I miss Maya." I crossed my arms. "You could have just said that instead of sending Pastor Tom or trying to ruin me online." Dad winced. "You're right. No excuses, no attempt to justify it." That was new. I sat across from them. "I'll say this once, but there are rules." Mom nodded. "Whatever you need. No manipulation," I said. "No guilt trips, no bringing up money. And you don't show up uninvited again. Text first and wait for me to say yes. And wait for..." Dad looked at me for a long time, then said, "Understood." Maya came back out, hugging the telescope box. "Can we set it up tonight?" "We can," I said. "If the sky's clear." Mom smiled at her, cautious but warm. "We'd like to see that too, if it's okay." I looked at Maya, not them. She was grinning, and that was my answer. "We'll see," I said. After they left, the apartment felt quiet again, but this time it didn't feel invaded. Just adjusted. Like a window had opened for a minute and then closed again. That afternoon, I was cleaning up dishes when there was another knock. 2 knocks, then one more. A different rhythm. When I opened the door, Clara was there. Ryan stood a step behind her, hands in his pockets, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Clara looked nervous. Her makeup was minimal, her voice lower than usual. "Can we talk?" I leaned on the doorframe. "Depends what about." She swallowed. "Everything. Mostly me." Maya peeked from the hallway. "Aunt Clara?" Clara smiled a little. "Hey, kiddo." I stepped aside, motioned them in. "Make it quick." Clara stood near the counter, twisting a ring on her finger. "I was selfish," she said. "I made everything about me, even when you were just trying to protect Maya. I said things online I shouldn't have. I'm sorry." Ryan nodded. She's been wanting to say that for a while. Clara continued. "I know sorry doesn't fix what we did, but I don't want Maya growing up thinking we hated each other." Maya stepped forward. "I don't think that. I just didn't like when everyone was mean to Dad." That one sentence hit harder than anything else could have. Clara looked at her, eyes glassy. "You're right," she said. "We were mean. You didn't deserve that." Maya nodded once and handed her a piece of paper she'd been holding. One of her drawings, a cartoon rocket labeled, "Family Trying Again." Clara smiled and wiped her eyes. "Thanks." I looked at her and said, "Let's be clear. If you want to be part of our lives, you have to understand that I'm not your backup plan anymore. No loans, no bailouts, no guilt." "I get it," she said quickly. "I don't want money. I just want us to be okay again." "Okay takes time," I said. She nodded. "Then I'll wait." After they left, Maya was practically bouncing. Everyone's saying sorry, she said. That means we can have family dinners again, right? I smiled faintly. Maybe. Small ones. Then I texted both my parents and Clara. Sky's clear. If you want to see Jupiter, come by at 8 short visit. That evening, the sky was clear enough for stars. We set up the telescope on the balcony. I let Maya handle most of it. She was careful and confident, tightening the screws, adjusting the lens. At 8, right on time, headlights slid into the parking lot. My parents' car. Then another, Clara and Ryan. I thought about sending them away, but Maya was already waving them over. Come see Jupiter, she called out. They stepped out onto the balcony and joined us quietly. No drama, no tension. Clara helped Maya line up the focus. Dad stood off to the side, hands in his pockets, just watching her mom brought a thermos of hot chocolate, handing out cups without saying much. For a while, nobody talked. The night was calm. Maya pointed to the telescope. See that tiny dot next to Jupiter? That's one of its moons, Dad says it's called Io. Clara leaned over. It's beautiful. Maya grinned. It's fiery. I like it because it doesn't stay still. Dad laughed quietly. Sounds like someone I know? I looked at him. He wasn't smiling at me, just watching his granddaughter, eyes softer than I'd seen in years. The peace that night didn't feel perfect. It felt cautious, temporary, but real. When everyone left, I tucked Maya into bed. She was still talking about the telescope, about how she could see the stars better than ever. I stood by her door for a minute, listening to her hum before falling asleep. Forgiving them didn't mean trusting them. It meant showing Maya that love with boundaries still counts as love. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Story 3. My parents refused to pay for my dream college because it's not fair to my sister. They cut me off, funded her cheating, and told everyone I abandoned them. When the truth came out, I didn't say a word. My success spoke loud enough. Hey, Reddit. My family treated my sister like a celebrity and treated me like I was furniture that occasionally paid bills. So I said, cool, enjoy the show, packed my stuff, and built a life without them. Turns out they weren't done being unhinged. Buckle up, this one gets loud. Name's Leon. I'm 26 now, working as a design engineer in a company that actually appreciates having someone who can solve problems without crying about it. I wasn't born with that confidence. I earned it the slow way. But if you want to understand why my patience for disrespect is basically dead, you gotta meet the people who raised me. My parents are Hank and Abigail. Picture two people who think they're running a royal bloodline instead of a normal household. And their chosen heir? My older sister, Ada. According to them, she was basically one miracle short of walking on water. If she blinked, they bragged. If I built something cool, they acted like I was rearranging chairs. She's older, and after a medical leave, our parents never called what it was. Being held back, Ada and I ended up in the same grade. That meant we applied the same year. I wasn't mistreated in the after-school special way. It was quieter. Ada got the spotlight. I got the wall behind the spotlight. She loved it. Attention was her oxygen. I swear she couldn't function unless people were clapping for something she didn't do. Meanwhile, my entire high school life was work mode. I spent late nights in the garage soldering boards, messing with circuits, building dumb prototypes because it helped me breathe. After school, I'd clock into my part-time job, stash whatever money I could, then go home and keep building until the sun hinted at showing up again. I didn't need praise. I just wanted out of that house and into something real. My dream school? This elite engineering program I'd obsessed over since freshman year. The kind of place where people actually build stuff and don't just talk about it. The brochures were taped inside my locker, like some kids' tape band posters. Ada's dream school? Whatever campus looked best on Hank's LinkedIn page. He bragged about her getting accepted months before she even applied. Abigail was the same. She acted like admissions officers were personally begging Ada to bless them with her presence. Ada obviously loved every second of it. She'd walk around telling people which dorm she'd probably pick, even though she hadn't been accepted anywhere. By spring, envelopes started showing up for both of us. This is where Hank and Abigail's favoritism went from annoying to clinically delusional. When I got my first acceptance letter, they didn't congratulate me. They didn't even look up. They just said, "Don't get ahead of yourself. We need to focus on Ada." I didn't argue. It wouldn't have mattered. You can't convince people who already decided what reality is. Then, the big one came. The envelope from my dream school. Partial scholarship. My hands were literally shaking opening it. And I'm not a hand-shaking type of guy. For the first time in forever, I felt like everything I'd done was actually worth something. I walked into the living room with the letter, Hank was watching TV. Abigail was scrolling her phone. Ada was practicing her future college girl laugh like she was auditioning for some show. I told them. Straight, simple. I got in, and they're giving me a partial scholarship. Nothing. Hank blinked like I'd interrupted a commercial. Abigail said, "That's nice, but let's wait on more important news." Ada rolled her eyes like my achievement was some kind of inconvenience. A few days later, Ada's letters arrived. First one, rejection. Second, rejection. Third, another rejection. Watching her face fall was like watching someone drop their phone in slow motion. She kept mumbling about how they must have mixed up the applications. Hank and Abigail refused to accept it. They tore into every excuse available. The system is broken. Admissions don't recognize real talent. They probably had a quota this year. Anything except, our daughter didn't work hard. Ada went full meltdown mode, crying, blaming the universe, blaming teachers, blaming the weather, basically anything that didn't involve looking at her transcript. She kept saying stuff like, "I don't understand how this could happen to me," as if rejection was for peasants. The house basically turned into a pressure cooker. You could feel the anger radiating off my parents like heat lamps. I kept to myself and minded my business, because I already knew this storm was headed in my direction. And I was right. The next morning, Hank walked into the kitchen with this dramatic sigh like he was about to announce a funeral schedule. He leaned on the counter, serious face locked in, and said, "We need a family talk." That was it. No context, no warm-up. Just the tone he uses when he's gearing up to say something stupid. I didn't say anything out loud, but in my head, I just went, "Perfect. Here comes the nonsense." Hank sat at the head like he paid rent for the air in the room. Abigail had her, "This is going to hurt me more than you" expression locked in, which was always a lie. And Ada? She looked like she was practicing her heartbroken victim face in a mirror all morning. I sat down, mostly because standing would have made it look like I cared. Hank cleared his throat. "Leon, we've talked it over. Your acceptance is complicated." I raised an eyebrow. "It's college, not a felony." He ignored that. "You going to that school right now would make Ada feel small. It would be cruel to take such a big step ahead of her when she's going through something difficult." Ada put her hand to her chest, like she'd been personally wounded by my existence. "It's just a lot, Leon. You know how much I wanted my school." I stared at her. "Okay, and what does that have to do with mine?" She flinched like I threw a brick, which honestly told me everything. Hank leaned in, doing that fatherly voice he uses when he's trying to sound wise instead of controlling. "A real man sacrifices for his family. You need to stay home, go to community college, help Ada find her footing. Once she's settled, we can revisit your plans." Abigail chimed in immediately. "It's not forever. Just 2 years. Stay close. Don't make your sister feel worse than she already does." I let them talk until they ran out of breath. Then I answered once, clearly, because I'm not the type who repeats himself like a broken speaker. "I worked for this. I earned it. The scholarship doesn't wait. And I'm not throwing away my future because Ada didn't get into her school." Abigail stiffened. "Leon, don't be selfish. You know how fragile she is right now." Ada sniffed dramatically. "You're choosing yourself over your family. You always think you're better." And I laughed once, short and sharp. "I don't think I'm better. I think I'm done living in your shadow." Hank's face went red instantly. "If you walk away from this family to chase some ego trip," "It's not an ego trip," I cut in. "It's my life." That pushed him over. He slammed his hand on the table. "Then you're on your own. No support. No help. Don't come back asking for anything." I sat back. "That's fine. They expected pleading. They expected me to crumble and beg for approval I never got anyway. When I didn't, their expressions cracked. Shock, anger, confusion, like they weren't prepared for a version of me that didn't fold." Abigail crossed her arms. "If you leave, don't expect to be part of this family." I shrugged. "You made that choice the second you tried to chain my future to Ada's ego." Ada scoffed. "See? You always act above us." I looked at her, completely calm. "Ada, I didn't take anything from you. You just didn't earn what you thought you were owed." She froze, and for a moment, the whole room stopped breathing. That was the true breaking point. Hank stood up like he wanted to throw me out right then. Abigail grabbed Ada protectively, like I'd said something violent instead of honest. And Ada just glared at me with this mix of hatred and insecurity that I'd seen 1,000 times, but never cared about until now. The meeting ended with them officially declaring I was cut off. No college money, no help, no contact. Just a cold dismissal from the people who were supposed to be in my corner. Graduation week for our class made everything even clearer. During senior week, they went all out for Ada's events. Balloons, gifts, photos with half the extended family. At my actual ceremony, they showed up late, stood in the back, didn't clap, didn't speak to me, and left before I even reached them. It was ridiculous how normal that felt. I packed what I had, mostly tools, clothes, and a laptop that already sounded like it had emphysema, and left for my new campus. No parade, no goodbye, no emotional scene. Just me stepping out the door and not looking back. The first night in my tiny dorm room, I sat on the mattress, looked around, and realized there was no safety net, no backup plan, no one to call if I screwed up. And honestly, for the first time in my life, that felt perfect. My dream school didn't waste time reminding me I wasn't in my hometown anymore. First week, I walked into a physics lecture and heard 3 kids arguing about which private high school produced better Ivy candidates. Meanwhile, I was sitting there with a secondhand backpack that squeaked when I opened it and a laptop that booted slower than my grandma walked. Didn't matter. I didn't come here to compete with trust funds. I came here to work. If they had money, I had stubbornness. That felt like a fair trade. To survive, I stacked jobs like I was collecting them. Morning shift at the dorm desk, tutoring freshmen who didn't know how to open MATLAB, lab assistant hours whenever a professor needed someone to do the work no one else wanted to touch. My schedule looked like a punishment list, but it paid rent and kept me fed. Classes were brutal, but my grades were solid. Eventually, one of the professors pulled me into his research lab after watching me fix a botched circuit in 5 minutes. Then an internship lined up from that connection. Nothing glamorous, but enough to make me feel like I'd finally caught momentum. For a while, things felt almost normal. Tired, but normal. Then Ada had to make sure everyone remembered she existed. One night, around 2 in the morning, I took a break from studying and opened my phone. Bad idea. The first thing on my feed was a massive text wall written by Ada, complete with crying emojis, dramatic line breaks, and the classic "I just want to be honest on here" opener. Her rant went something like, "Leon abandoned the family. He thinks he's better than us. He walked away when we needed him. Some people just don't have loyalty." Dozens of comments. Some were from old classmates who barely knew us, but loved siding with whoever yelled the loudest. Some were mutuals saying, "You deserve better, Queen." A few asked if I'd really run away. I stared at it and snorted. "Wow," I muttered. "Didn't know I died and became a villain off screen." Dark humor kept me from punching a wall, but it stuck in my head longer than I liked. It wasn't the post itself. It was how fast people believed her version. She wrote the script, and I wasn't even in the room to correct it. I went back to studying, because Rent didn't care about my public image. Then my laptop decided to betray me too. The thing had been coughing and wheezing for months. That night, it let out a sad click, screen froze, and then died like it was clocking out permanently. Finals week, projects due, lab reports half written, code half finished, and I had exactly $0 to fix it. I didn't panic. I just stared at it, breathed once, and said, "All right, guess we're doing this the hard way." I lived in the library for the next week. Literally. I slept there between study sessions, used loaner computers that felt older than I was, and tried to rebuild everything I lost. I dug through old drive backups, begged a TA to give me an extension, and worked on restoring my files like I was defusing a bomb. It was survival mode, but I didn't break. I didn't have the luxury to break. By the end of that week, I was running on caffeine, library air, and spite. My eyes looked like I hadn't slept in 10 years, but the work was done. Barely. I walked out of my last exam feeling like a ghost with decent grades. I made it to my dorm thinking I'd finally collapse. Instead, my phone buzzed. Ada. The text read, "I'm nearby. Come outside." I stared at it. Little dramatic for someone who supposedly hated me. I figured it was a prank from her friends, but when I stepped outside, she was standing there, arms crossed, designer jacket, wounded princess expression ready to go. A rideshare sat behind her with its blinkers on. She started with the soft approach. "Mom's been crying. Dad's furious. Are you really going to do this forever?" I leaned against the wall. "You disowned me. Don't act surprised I stayed gone." Her face twisted instantly. "You always had to be better, Leon. You couldn't just let me have my thing." "My thing," I said. "Ada, I didn't take anything from you. You didn't get in. That's your problem, not mine." She stepped closer, voice rising. "You wanted me to fail. You liked seeing me hurt." "No," I said, calm. "I wanted you to win, but I'm not shrinking my life so you feel tall." She looked away dramatically, like someone was filming. "If you were a real brother, you'd come home, or transfer." "I'm struggling." I shrugged. "I'll help you study if you actually want help, But I'm not becoming your emotional crutch. She laughed, bitter and sharp. You're so selfish. You act like you're above us. I straightened. No, I'm just not controlled by you. Then I finished it, clean and cold. You don't miss me. You miss control. Ada's face went red. She spun around, stormed back to the car, slammed the door, and sped off like she had somewhere important to be. I watched the car disappear and thought, okay, she's panicking. Something's going on. After the night Ada ambushed me outside the dorms, I figured she'd cool off and leave me alone. Wrong. A few days later, she texted like nothing had happened. Hey Leo, with a smiling emoji. Miss you. How are classes? I stared at the screen. The emoji was already a red flag. Ada didn't miss people. She missed utility. I answered with one word. Busy. She responded instantly. Aw, I'm glad you're doing okay. I've been thinking about you a lot. Right. Then she got to the real reason she reached out. Can you send me that lab write-up you mentioned last time? I'm taking a similar course and I'm dying over here. There it was. Not even subtle. No, I typed. Do your own work. 5 seconds later, her tone flipped like a switch she kept oiled. Wow, selfish. Same old Leon thinking he's too good to help. Dry humor kicked in. You asked me for cheat sheets, not a kidney. She left me on red, which was fine. The conversation was never about reconnecting. She wanted an academic crutch and expected me to play the role. 2 days later, Jillian, my cousin, messaged me. I'm pretty sure Ada's cheating, she wrote. She barely comes to class but somehow gets A's on everything. I wasn't surprised. Ada always treated effort like it was beneath her. But Jillian wasn't guessing. She sent screenshots from Ada's roommate. The roommate recognized a purchased paper Ada had recycled and forwarded receipts and messages from their shared group chat, plus emails where Ada arranged payments for quizzes and assignments. It wasn't subtle cheating. It was sloppy, lazy, and expensive. Exactly Ada's style. What do I do? Jillian asked. I told her the truth. Do what's right. I'm not getting involved. Jillian reported it to the Academic Integrity Office. They launched an investigation immediately. Meanwhile, Hank and Abigail were performing their usual double-life routine. I heard from someone back home that when parents at church asked how I was doing, Hank would smile like a proud politician and say, Leon's at a top engineering program. We always knew he'd make it. Cute. Considering the last thing he told me was to never come back. Abigail chimed in too. Our son's doing amazing. So dedicated. Dedicated? I was the kid they kicked out like a defective appliance. But apparently bragging rights mattered more than remembering their own words. The investigation into Ada's cheating took about a month, but the rumors started leaking early. Someone in the office knew someone who knew someone, and suddenly whispers spread across her campus. Ada panicked, and like clockwork, she blamed me. On social media, she posted, Funny how the second my brother leaves, he still manages to ruin my life. Must be nice trying to destroy your own family from miles away. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in a decade messaged me like I'd committed a federal crime. Why would you sabotage your sister? You always held grudges. Help her instead of tearing her down. I didn't respond to any of them. Explaining myself to people who get their facts from Ada was a waste of oxygen. The official decision dropped 2 weeks later. Ada was expelled for repeated academic dishonesty. The evidence was overwhelming. Paid essay services, purchased test answers, messages confirming she wasn't doing anything herself. Hank and Abigail reacted exactly how I expected. They went full meltdown. They hired lawyers. They claimed the school was targeting her. They cried to anyone who'd listen about unfair treatment. They called it a misunderstanding and harsh punishment for a young woman under stress. None of that worked. Ada was out. And then another piece of information slipped out, one that didn't surprise me but still managed to hit a nerve. Hank and Abigail weren't just aware of the cheating. They'd been paying for it, literally. They funded the essay services, the answer keys, the ghostwriters. They were trying to buy Ada a degree the same way they tried to buy her a future. And when the whole operation blew up, they acted like victims. Ada returned home with a dramatic announcement about how she was starting fresh at community college. Hank and Abigail spun it like she had chosen a humble, noble path. Our Ada is so strong, Abigail posted online. She's rebuilding herself, Hank told neighbors. No mention of the expulsion. No mention of the cheating. Definitely no mention of who paid for it. Their mess was on fire, but I wasn't part of it. I didn't owe them anything. Not explanations, not comfort, not silence. Meanwhile, I was preparing for my own graduation. Project deadlines, capstone presentations, and interview rounds were piling up. For the first time in a long time, my future felt like it was taking shape. I was exhausted, but everything I'd built was finally coming together. While they were sinking, I was climbing. And that contrast didn't feel like revenge. It felt like proof that walking away had been the right choice all along. I didn't know it yet, but my next challenge wasn't their chaos. It was the fight for the career I'd bled for. Graduation came faster than I expected. One minute I was sleeping in the library living off loaner computers, and the next I was standing in a cap and gown with an honors cord around my neck. It felt surreal, but also earned. Every late night, every shift, every insult from home, it all stacked into that moment. Hank and Abigail didn't show, obviously. No congratulations, no, we're proud of you, not even a lazy text. They attended Ada's elementary school honors assembly with more enthusiasm than they ever showed for my degree. I took the diploma, nodded at the applause, and walked out without looking for faces that were never going to be there. A week later, I got the email I'd been grinding for since freshman year, a job offer from one of the top engineering firms in the country, the kind of place Hank used to name drop when bragging about successful people he knew. The irony wasn't lost on me. The offer was good: salary, relocation stipend, benefits, the works. I accepted, signed the onboarding forms, and thought for once something in my life was going to be simple. Of course it wasn't. 2 days before my start date, HR sent the standard background check form asking for my residential address history and an emergency contact. I listed no contact for family and used a friend as my emergency contact. The screening vendor followed up politely, asking for a simple verification of long-term independence. I kept it short. My parents disowned me when I went to college. We're not in contact. I gave them my campus housing supervisor as a reference. 48 hours later, background check cleared, see you Monday. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled and moved forward. I moved to a new city, small apartment, cheap furniture, neighborhood that smelled like old coffee and ambition. I started the job with the same energy I'd had in college. Outwork everyone and don't complain. It paid off. Within the first year, I went from entry level to leading a small team. By the second year, I was managing my own project. When you grow up with parents who treat you like wallpaper, hearing coworkers actually value your input feels almost foreign. Life was steady until one random weekend at the grocery store. I ran into someone from my hometown, Matt, a guy I used to sit with in physics. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies. He spotted me in the checkout line. Leon? Dude, no way. He looked me up and down like he'd discovered a rare animal. Heard you moved out here. So you really left your family behind, huh? I blinked. That's what you heard? He shrugged. Ada said you abandoned them, that you wanted nothing to do with them. I let out a short laugh. Funny. They disowned me. Not the other way around. He froze. Seriously? Seriously, I said. They told me not to come back when I chose my college. Ada didn't want anyone outshining her. They supported her cheating. She got expelled, and somehow I became the villain. Matt looked uncomfortable, like he'd just realized he'd sided with the wrong movie character. Man, that's not what anybody back home says. Yeah, I said, because they only hear Ada's script. He didn't have anything else to add. He just nodded, muttered a "sorry, dude," and wheeled his cart away. That moment didn't make me angry. It just confirmed how far their lies had spread. Months rolled into years. Promotions came. My apartment got nicer. My life stopped feeling like something I had to defend. Jillian kept me updated about Ada, usually with messages that started with, "You won't believe this." According to her, Ada bounced around community college classes, quitting half of them, blaming professors for not understanding her potential. Hank and Abigail smothered her with support, acting like she was too special for normal expectations. It didn't surprise me. They built her a world with no consequences. She stayed in it. I didn't hear a word from my parents directly. Not on birthdays, not during holidays, not when I got promoted, not ever. Silence became the default. Then one day, Jillian sent a message. Ada's finally finishing her associate degree. They're throwing a huge party. Everyone's acting like she overcame some massive hardship. I laughed under my breath. Of course they are. A parade for cleaning up the mess they created. Classic. Jillian added, "They're telling everyone it's a big family milestone. Your name's coming up." That got my attention. My family loved rewriting history. They'd been doing it since the day I left, but I wasn't 18 anymore, and I wasn't letting them keep authorship of my life story. I wasn't going back, but I also wasn't staying silent. The truth had been buried long enough. Ada's community college graduation party landed on a Saturday I was supposed to be relaxing after a 60-hour work week. Instead, my phone buzzed nonstop like it owed me money. Jillian was the first to break through the notifications. "Leon, they're dragging you again," her message started. "It's bad. They're rewriting everything." I replied, Define everything. She called instead of typing, which was already a sign things were stupid. You're the villain, she said. They're telling everyone you abandoned the family, refused to help Ada when she struggled in a toxic school environment, and that you cut ties because you think you're too good. I sighed. Of course. But Jillian wasn't done. They're saying Ada chose community college to find herself, and that you're jealous she stayed close to family. I laughed under my breath. Dark humor kept my blood pressure down. Jealous of Ada's academic speedrun to probation? Sure. Leon, I'm serious. People are believing them. Even relatives who know better are nodding along because Hank and Abigail are acting like their version is gospel. I didn't raise my voice, didn't get heated. I just said, time to fix the narrative. She exhaled. You're really gonna do it? Oh yeah, I said. If they want an audience, I'll give them a performance. I hung up, opened the old family group chat that had been dead silent toward me for years, and typed a message. No anger, no theatrics, just facts sharpened into something clean and lethal. Since you're all rewriting my life again, here's the real version so you don't choke on the lies later. My parents disowned me because I refused to give up my dream school for Ada. Ada didn't choose community college. She was expelled for cheating. She paid for papers and online exams. Hank and Abigail helped fund it. There's a formal finding from her university's academic integrity office. The documentation exists. That's why she ended up back home. Not self-discovery, not a humble restart. Expulsion. I didn't send it yet. I added one more line. As for me, since you keep pretending I disappeared, I've been promoted again. I'm leading a major engineering division at the company you used to brag about, Hank. The one you said, only the best get into. I guess I did. Then I hit send. No typing bubbles, no instant responses, just dead stillness in the chat. Jillian texted me immediately. Oh my God, Leon. The room just froze. Apparently someone at the party had the group chat open, and they read my message out loud. Not dramatically, just quiet, like tossing a grenade onto a dinner table. Jillian gave me the play-by-play through rapid-fire texts. Everyone stopped talking. Hank looks like he swallowed a stapler. Abigail's face is white. Ada is crying, but also yelling? Hard to tell. People are whispering. Your uncle just asked, is this true? And nobody answered. Then, chaos. Full chaos. People are arguing. Someone left early. And I leaned back in my chair, staring at my phone like it was a window into the circus. Another message came. Hank is saying this is a misunderstanding. No one believes him. Abigail is blaming stress. Ada is yelling that you ruined her life by airing private matters. Someone asked why they lied for years. They walked away. I didn't feel triumphant or angry. Just done. Completely done with that fantasy world they kept trying to drag me into. 10 minutes later, the group chat finally woke up. Abigail. How dare you do this tonight of all nights? Hank, you had no right to humiliate your sister. Ada. I hope you're happy. You always wanted to destroy me. You're sick, Leon. Sick. I muted the chat. Didn't bother responding. Their anger wasn't new. It was just louder because their audience finally heard the truth. Jillian texted again. People are leaving. A few relatives pulled me aside and said they had questions about your parents for years. Then, Leon, I think you just blew up the entire family mythology. I typed back, wasn't much of a mythology, just a long-running delusion. She sent a laughing emoji, then a serious one. You did the right thing. They've been lying forever. After that, the night quieted down. I went back to cleaning my apartment like nothing happened. Truth doesn't need applause. About an hour later, my phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't rage. It was desperation. Leon, please answer. We need to talk. You misunderstood everything. We can explain. Please don't do this to us. I ignored them. Clarity had finally caught up to them. Not because they regretted what they did, but because other people saw it. By morning, the tone shifted even more. We're family. We can fix this if you just talk to us. Let's put this behind us. Life is too short for grudges. I miss you. Please respond. The flood of we care messages hit harder than their rage, but not in the way they intended. It wasn't love. It was fear. Fear that their story wasn't the official one anymore. I didn't text back, because I knew what came next. It always came in the same order. Denial, anger, shame, guilt, fake reconciliation attempt. And sure enough, later that night, one final message came through. Abigail, we just want our son back. They had no idea how late that sentiment was, but I knew the storm wasn't over. The guilt trip phase had officially begun. The morning after Ada's party meltdown, I woke up to a message from a number I barely recognized. It was my aunt, one of the quiet ones. I saw some of the emails about Ada's situation back then, she wrote. Then she forwarded screenshots from a family damage control thread Hank started when they were drafting appeal letters. He'd CC'd a few relatives for support. The messages showed payments to SA services, plans to cover Ada's tracks, and lines like, as long as Leon never finds out. It didn't shock me, but it tightened something in my chest. It wasn't just true. It was documented. They had receipts. They buried them. My aunt added, I didn't know how deep it went. I thought they'd talk to you. I thought you knew. I'm sorry they put you in this spot. It didn't fix anything, but it validated everything. It gave weight to my decision to step away. It made the family talk ultimatum feel even more like a staged trap. I thanked her, told her she didn't owe me anything, and put my phone down. Not 2 minutes later, the guilt storm hit. First came Abigail's long, emotional paragraphs. She must have written them at dawn, thinking sincerity multiplied when stretched to essay length. Leon, family is all you have. You're breaking my heart. You don't understand how hard parenthood is. I love you so much, even if you can't see it. Please don't ruin us over one mistake. One mistake. That line almost made me laugh. Then Hank chimed in with the cold approach. Short sentences meant to sting. After everything we did for you, you owe us respect. We gave you a roof. You gave us betrayal. You never understood sacrifice. I sat there reading them, feeling nothing except mild annoyance. It was a predictable pivot. Anger hadn't worked, so now they were trying guilt, which always worked on Ada, not on me. I didn't respond right away, so they tried another tactic, rewriting history. Abigail wrote, we never disowned you. You misunderstood. We were hurt, not hateful. Hank added, we asked you to stay close to support your sister. That's not disowning. I actually did laugh at that one, out loud. These people could look at a tornado ripping through their living room and say, it was a breeze. You're being dramatic. More messages came. We didn't choose Ada over you. We tried our best as parents. You're remembering it wrong. You exaggerate everything. They wanted a version of reality where they hadn't cut me off. A version where Ada's failures were tragedies of the universe, not consequences of choices. A version where I was the unstable one who ran away. Then came the reconnect push. Let's talk. Come visit. Let's put this behind us. We miss you. Your sister wants peace. We should heal as a family. None of it was about me. It was about restoring the image they cared about. They wanted the appearance of a united family, not the work of being one. They wanted me to come home so no one could say, where's Leon? At gatherings. They wanted Ada to feel like she wasn't the only one who messed up. They didn't want me. They wanted the version of me that stayed silent. I didn't give them that. I finally responded with one clean message. I'll talk when you're ready to admit what you actually did. No lies, no guilt, no flipping the story. Until then, keep your distance. It was a boundary, not a suggestion. Abigail responded instantly. We didn't do anything, Leon. You're twisting everything. Hank followed. You're being cruel. This is not how a son behaves. I shook my head. They reacted exactly how I expected. Angry that I wasn't bending. Angry that their guilt didn't stick. Angry that for the first time in their lives, I had leverage they couldn't spin into villainy. They kept pushing. We're proud of your success. Truly. Are you really cutting us off forever? You're hurting us more than you know. Leon, I'm sorry. Come home. I need my brother. I didn't reply to any of it. I wasn't going to be manipulated by people who only apologized when cornered. A week passed. The messages slowed down. The tone shifted from frantic to resigned. They realized I wasn't coming back. Not on their terms. I kept working, kept building my life. My career kept climbing. My apartment got nicer. My circle stayed small, but I trusted the people in it. Every once in a while, I thought about the idea of parents. Not my parents, just the concept. It would have been nice to have people who backed me, people who asked about my day, people who didn't treat love like a bargaining chip. But sometimes you have to accept you grew up with people who wanted a puppet, not a son. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I was steady. One night, as I finished reviewing project files for a deadline, I realized something simple and freeing. I built everything I have without them. The stability, the future, the respect. It's mine. And I'll never shrink myself again just to fit inside someone else's delusion. When people like Hank and Abigail lose control, they call it betrayal. When you stop letting them rewrite your life, they call it cruelty. When you finally walk away, they call it abandonment. But sometimes walking away is the most honest thing you can do. They wanted their son back. they never realized they lost him the day they tried to break his future to fix Ada's ego. It's been a few years since everything fell apart, though honestly, it didn't fall apart. It finally fell into place. I've got peace now. No fake apologies, no forced dinners, no pretending blood automatically means loyalty. Ada still lives at home, still searching for the next shortcut. Hank and Abigail post old family photos sometimes, pretending things are fine. I don't reply. I don't hate them. I just don't owe them anything. My life is quiet, focused, and mine. And that's enough. And that's the real end of the story. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Story 4. My wife's sister ruined my life with one lie. Everyone believed her. Years later, her own drunken confession surfaced, and the fallout destroyed her entire world. Hey Reddit, it's been a long time since I've posted anything, but I guess I just need to get this off my chest. A few years back, my entire life got wrecked over a lie. A really bad one. I lost everything because of it. Now, years later, things are different. Better, I guess. I'm not here for pity or attention, just to share what happened and maybe remind a few people that sometimes the truth takes its sweet time showing up. I remember that night clear as day. Sunday dinner at my wife's parents' house. Her mom, Eloise, was setting the table like we were hosting a royal banquet, and her dad kept yelling from the living room about the game. It was normal. Too normal for what was about to happen. Scarlett's family always had this habit of being too involved in everything. Every argument, every decision, even what brand of laundry soap we used, somehow became a family discussion. And her sister Alice was the worst at it. Always in our space. She'd drop by without calling, open our fridge like she lived there, and act like I was invisible until it suited her. At first, I thought she was just immature. She'd tease me sometimes, call me the quiet husband, make little jokes that felt off. Once, she came into our home office to borrow tape, but she stayed 20 minutes chit-chatting. Getting touchy, I told her to knock it off. She didn't like that. Scarlett said, "She's just lonely. Don't take it personally." Big mistake. Anyway, that night, the whole family gathered. Her brothers Ben and Peter were already a few beers deep. Alice sat across from me, barely saying a word, just picking at her food. I didn't think much of it until she suddenly put her fork down, real slow, and said, "I have to tell you all something." Everyone went quiet. Scarlett leaned in, concerned. "What is it?" Alice's eyes started watering instantly, like she'd been rehearsing. I didn't want to say anything because I was scared, but Adrian hurt me. The room froze. I blinked. What? She sniffed hard, shaking her head like she couldn't believe she was saying it. He forced himself on me a few months ago. I didn't want to believe it myself, but I'm pregnant, and it's his. Everything stopped moving for a second, like time folded in on itself. Then it exploded. Scarlett shot up from her chair so fast it fell over. "You're disgusting!" she screamed, and before I could say a word, her hand came across my face so hard my ears rang. The whole table jumped. Her brothers were already on their feet, yelling, cursing. "Are you kidding me?" I said, backing away, hands up. "That's not true. She's lying." But nobody heard me. Nobody wanted to. Alice covered her face like she was ashamed, crying hard now, full-blown shaking. "I didn't want to ruin your marriage," she said between sobs, "but I couldn't live with it anymore." Scarlett's mom gasped and started crying too. "How could you, Adrian?" "Because I didn't!" I shouted. "This is insane!" Ben grabbed me by the collar and shoved me against the wall. "You're lucky we don't kill you right now," he said through his teeth. Peter was filming on his phone, yelling something about making sure everyone sees the kind of man you are. I kept trying to talk, but my voice disappeared under their noise. Scarlett wouldn't even look at me. She was crying, shaking, repeating, "I trusted you," over and over like a broken record. Alice's crocodile tears kept flowing. She even started apologizing to Scarlett. It was such a disgusting performance that for a second, I thought maybe I was the crazy one for seeing through it. Eloise started yelling for someone to call the police. I heard sirens a few minutes later, and by then, the neighbors had gathered outside. Ben still had me pinned against the wall, spitting threats in my face. The cops came in yelling for everyone to back off. Ben let go. I stumbled, face burning, ears ringing, heart about to explode. I tried to explain to the officers, but it didn't matter. Alice was sitting on the couch, crying into her hands, repeating the same thing. He forced me. They asked if I wanted to say anything. I just stared at her. She couldn't even look me in the eye. They cuffed me for everyone's safety. As they dragged me out, I caught a glimpse of Scarlett standing by the stairs, crying quietly. Not once did she ask me if it was true. Not once did she say, "Wait, let's hear him out." She just stood there, letting them take me away like some monster that had been living in her house all along. I heard the words sick freak and lock him up. They pushed me into the car. The window glass showed my reflection, eyes wide, blood on my lip, shirt collar ripped. I didn't even recognize myself. At the station, they asked the same question 10 times in different ways. Did you assault your sister-in-law? No, I said every time. Why would she make it up? I didn't have an answer. How do you explain crazy to people who already made up their minds? After hours of pointless talking, one of the officers finally said, "No charges tonight, but don't go near that family." They said the crowd outside was heated and put me in protective holding for safety reasons. I sat on the hard bench, hands still trembling, the side of my face throbbing from Scarlett's slap. All I could think about was the look on Scarlett's face. Not anger, not even confusion, just certainty. That was the moment it hit me. My wife believed her sister without a second of hesitation, and nothing I said was ever going to change that. By morning, they let me out. No charges, no paperwork, except a warning not to contact the victim. The officer handing me my stuff wouldn't even meet my eyes. My phone buzzed nonstop the second it was back in my hand. Notifications, missed calls, messages from numbers I didn't know. When I walked out of the station, I understood why. Someone had already leaked the video from the dinner. It was everywhere. Me sitting there in shock, Alice crying, Scarlett slapping me, Ben grabbing me, captions like "another predator exposed by his own family" plastered under shaky footage. People adding hashtags I didn't even recognize. I opened one of the links, comments pouring in by the hundreds. Gross. Lock him up. Believe her. This is why women don't speak up. My face was being shared in threads like a wanted poster. The words alleged or accused were nowhere. In their eyes, I was already guilty. By lunch, fake screenshots started popping up. Someone had made fake DMs between me and Alice. My name, my old profile picture, fake messages. "I'll give you money if you don't tell Scarlett. We can handle the baby quietly." Stuff I never wrote, but the timestamps looked real enough to people scrolling by. The next day, HR emailed me to come in for a neutral discussion. 2 people from HR, 1 from legal, no smiles. They said they wanted to hear my perspective. I told them flat out, it's not true. She's lying. There's no evidence because nothing happened. They nodded like they were listening, but didn't write anything down. One of them said, "You understand how serious this is, right?" Another said, "We're concerned about our company's reputation during this sensitive time." 2 days later, I got an email. Due to recent events, the company has decided to initiate separation to protect its brand. No severance, no reference letter, just gone. I'd spent 5 years at that job, never late once. Didn't matter. I went home, and my landlord was waiting on the steps with a folded notice in his hand. "Hey man," he said, eyes on the ground. "Nothing personal. Tenants are nervous. I need you out by Friday." I stared at him. "You can't just—" He cut me off. "I'm sorry. Really." Then he walked away. I went to the window. My car was parked across the street. There was fresh spray paint across the side. Predator. I called Scarlett. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Blocked. Her mother had blocked me too. Even people we used to host at our apartment, neighbors, co-workers, casual friends, unfriended me like I was contagious. That night, a lawyer friend from college called. He said, "I can't represent you, but you should know your wife filed for a restraining order. Says you're dangerous. You'll get papers soon." The next morning, I tried to log into my old social media to at least defend myself. I couldn't. Alice had posted her story, tagging me by name and using my full name in every caption. She wrote, "I'm scared. He's threatening me if I speak out." People were flooding her comments with hearts and "You're so brave." I scrolled down and saw familiar names. Ben had commented, "Proud of you, sis. We'll keep you safe." Peter replied under someone else's comment, "We're dealing with it." That's when it clicked. One of them was feeding her the playbook. Maybe both. They weren't just standing by her. They were pushing the narrative, shaping it, making sure I stayed the villain. I stared at my cracked phone screen. My face was everywhere. My job gone. My apartment gone. My wife gone. Every move I made being screenshot and twisted. People I'd helped move furniture, fix gutters, watch their kids. None of them even asked if it was true. And sitting there on the floor, surrounded by trash bags I hadn't unpacked yet, I realized something I should have known the night she slapped me. My name was never coming back while I stayed here. Not my job, not my reputation, not my life. They wanted a villain. I'd been handed the role. I couldn't clear my name by shouting louder online. That only fed the fire. I couldn't go to court with no evidence. That would take years. If I stayed, I'd be a headline before the month was over. I needed to disappear, not because I was guilty, but because they'd already buried me. That's when the plan started forming in my head. Not revenge. Not some dramatic speech. Just vanish. Wipe myself off the grid, clean every trace, leave nothing for them to cling to. And for the first time in days, a thought cut through the noise like a blade. They can't ruin a ghost. I shut my laptop, pulled out a notepad, started writing down every account, every subscription, every link to my name, crossed them off one by one. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post a goodbye. If the world wanted me gone so bad, I'd give them exactly what they asked for. The next morning, I stopped being Adrian. No note, no announcement. I just started erasing myself piece by piece. First went the social media. Every account, every old post, every picture. I didn't just deactivate them, I deleted them, changed recovery emails, wiped backups. My digital shadow went dark overnight. Then the bank accounts. I emptied what little I had left into cash orders under different names and closed the accounts, canceled subscriptions, sold my car for less than it was worth and took cash. Even my phone number, gone. New prepaid SIM, no contract, no trace. It was weirdly easy to vanish when no one wanted to hear from you anyway. By the end of the week, my apartment looked like it had never been lived in. Clothes bagged, furniture listed on Craigslist under fake profiles. People came and picked things up without questions. One guy hauled away my couch while scrolling through his phone, probably reading comments about the predator from the viral video, and not even realizing it was me handing him the keys. I bought a one-way bus ticket with cash and left before dawn. No goodbye to anyone. The city slid away behind me like a bad dream. I didn't go far at first, just rode until the scenery changed from highways to empty fields, then to small towns nobody posted about. By the time I reached the coast, I was using a new name. Mike. Not Miles, not anything sentimental. Just plain Mike, the name on an old work shirt I found at a thrift shop. The town I landed in was small and gray, tucked against the edge of the water like it was hiding from the world. No billboards, no chain stores, a harbor full of worn boats and the smell of salt. I walked to the first diner I saw, ate a sandwich in silence, then asked the waitress if anyone was hiring. She pointed at the dock. That's how I ended up fixing boats for a man named Don. He didn't ask for paperwork, just handed me gloves and pointed at a cracked hull. Sand it down, patch it, keep your head down, he said. That was fine by me. Days started blending. Wake up in a rented room above an old supply shop. Work at the dock until my hands ached. Eat at the diner. Sleep. Repeat. Nobody knew me. Nobody whispered. Nobody asked questions. For the first time in months, I wasn't a headline. I was just a guy sanding wood. At night, I'd go to the library, a tiny one-room building that still used paper cards for checkouts, and use one of their old computers. I'd search my old name, not because I wanted to torture myself, but because I needed to know the scale of the lie. Every time, there was more. Alice on some podcast, telling her story about surviving a predator in her own family. Her followers leaving comments like, "You're so strong," and "We believe you." Scarlett was nowhere. No statements, no posts, just silent. I started saving everything. Screenshots, posts, interviews, dates, times, usernames. All of it went into a private folder on an encrypted USB I kept on me. Not because I knew what I'd do with it, but because I couldn't stand the idea of the truth disappearing while their lie thrived. Work kept me busy. The routine dulled the noise in my head. My hands got stronger, my skin rougher. People started recognizing me as Mike, the quiet guy at the dock who fixed things. It wasn't a life, not yet, but it was breathing room. Then one night, after closing the library, I sat at the old computer scrolling through another thread about Alice. Same comments, same fake sympathy. I was about to log off when a new email appeared in the inbox I'd made for job hunting. No subject line, no name, just 5 words. I know you didn't do it. I stared at it for a long time. No attachments, no links, just that sentence. My thumb hovered over the mouse. Reply or delete. For the first time since I left, my heart started racing again. I logged off without answering. Walked back to my room in the cold wind off the harbor. The message burned into my head. Back in the room, the USB drive felt heavier than usual in my pocket. I sat on the edge of the bed, laptop open, the email still on the screen. My new name was Mike. My hands were calloused. My old life was gone. But whoever sent that message had just reminded me, my story wasn't. I stared at the blinking cursor, unsure whether to reply. After a while, I copied the address into a search bar. Nothing came up. It wasn't tied to anything public. My gut said trap, but curiosity won. I replied with one word, who? A few minutes later, another message popped up. No text, just a link. A short, messy URL that didn't look like any social platform. I hovered over it for a full minute before opening it in a new tab using the library's computer. If someone was tracking me, they weren't getting my personal device. The page loaded slow. like it was fighting to stay alive. Just one video file sitting in the middle, no title, no watermark. I hit play. The camera was shaky, like it had been recorded on a phone at a private party. Music thumping faintly in the background, people laughing off screen, and then Alice. Sitting on some couch, drink in hand, makeup smudged, eyes half-lidded, she was laughing, the kind of laugh people use when they've had too much and think they're untouchable. "You know what's funny?" she slurred. Everyone actually believed me. Someone behind the camera asked what she meant. Alice leaned forward, smiling like it was a secret joke. "Adrian," she said, "the guy I said assaulted me. I made it up." She even laughed about the pregnancy part. Said she made that up too. That it was just to make it stick. The person off-screen laughed awkwardly. "No way!" Alice rolled her eyes. "He looked at me like I was nothing. So I made him nothing. I told them he did it. And boom, gone." Everyone believed me. Even Scarlet apostrophe, she snorted. Especially Scarlet. My stomach twisted. I replayed it 3 times just to be sure. It wasn't deepfake or AI or edited. It was her voice, her laugh, her words. She confessed to destroying me like it was gossip. I downloaded the video instantly and copied it onto my encrypted drive. Then I checked the source. I checked the file details. It was hosted on a private drive link, and the owner tag showed Scarlet M right there in the metadata. My heart stopped. That meant my wife, or ex-wife, whatever she was now, had the video all along. I sat there in silence, the fan from the computer humming like static in my skull. That meant my wife, or ex-wife, whatever she was now, knew. She'd had that clip, maybe for weeks, maybe months, and she hadn't said a word. At first, I thought she might be trying to frame me again somehow, but the clip was too damning to her sister. There was no benefit to her sending it unless she'd finally realized what really happened. I couldn't decide what stung more, knowing I finally had proof, or realizing Scarlett had seen it before me and still said nothing. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I was cold, focused. Going public would have been messy. No one listens to long explanations online. They just scroll to the next drama. But Alice's whole world was built on image. The victim, the brave survivor, the influencer with a cause. I didn't need to destroy her. I just needed to show the truth to the right people. So I started small. I made 3 anonymous accounts using throwaway emails and VPNs. I uploaded the clip to a hidden folder on an encrypted cloud drive, sent out links labeled Private Proof Re Alice, first to her fiancé. He was some real estate guy from her city, then to her employer, a nonprofit that posted daily about protecting survivors, and finally, to a couple of smaller online forums that still discussed my case occasionally. Within a week, the cracks appeared. Her fiancé deleted all their engagement photos. Then his page went private. Then her account disappeared for 2 days and came back with all comments turned off. She volunteered with a nonprofit and worked at a boutique. Both cut her loose without a word. I didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just watched it unfold from a library computer like a spectator at my own funeral. Every time I saw her image fade from another platform, I saved the page, date, time, screenshot. My folder grew, not because I needed more evidence. I just liked watching the truth finally leave footprints. About 2 weeks later, another email came in. This one from a different address, but the tone was the same. Short, careful, almost guilty. Subject, I know what she did. Message, please talk to me. There was no name, but I knew the wording. It was Scarlet. I could tell by how she capitalized her I, and how she always put periods after short sentences. She'd done it in every text we'd ever sent. I sat there staring at the screen again, hands hovering over the keyboard. She had my new email somehow, which meant she'd been looking for me. For what? To apologize? To explain? To make herself feel better? I didn't reply. I read the message 3 times, then forwarded it to my private folder with everything else. The folder that had become my real diary, my proof that I hadn't gone crazy, that this happened. Then I deleted the email chain from my inbox entirely. If she wanted to talk, she should have done it when I was bleeding and cuffed, not now that her world was shaking. I leaned back in the chair, the dull hum of the computer fan filling the silence again. For the first time, the truth wasn't buried. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone twist it again. I closed the laptop, pocketed my USB, and left before the library lights flicked off. That night, I slept with the calm of someone who finally had proof, and the certainty that he wasn't done yet. It was late afternoon when I heard the knock. Not the casual kind. This was steady, deliberate, like someone rehearsed it. When I opened the door, she was there. Scarlet, soaked, tired, clutching an umbrella that had given up halfway. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, maybe weeks. They didn't have that spark I used to know. "I found you," she said softly, voice shaking just enough to sound real. It took me a long time. I didn't answer, just stared, letting her squirm under the silence. She swallowed. I hired someone, a private investigator. You changed your name, your everything, but you still use the same initials on an invoice and the same P.O. box on a supply receipt. That's how he tracked you down. Why are you here, Scarlett? I finally asked. Her voice cracked. Because I had to see you. I couldn't live with it anymore. I didn't move, didn't invite her in. She hesitated, then whispered, please. I stepped aside. She entered slowly, like she was afraid the floor would collapse under her weight. Scarlett stood in the middle of the room, dripping on the floor. You built a whole life here, she said quietly. You look different. People tend to change after being accused of something they didn't do, I replied flatly. She winced. I deserve that. No, you deserve worse, I said. But go on. Tell me what you came here to say. She clasped her hands, trembling. When the video came out, Alice's confession, everything fell apart. Everyone who stood with me just disappeared. It was like the lie turned back and swallowed all of us. I leaned against the table, arms crossed. And now you want what? Closure? Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. I want you to know that I'm sorry for not listening, for believing her. For ruining my life? I cut in. She flinched like the words hit her. Yes. The room went quiet. Only the rain filled the gap between us. I keep replaying that day, she said finally, her voice small. You were holding a mug. You looked confused, not guilty. But I didn't see that. I saw what I was told to see. Alice said you forced yourself on her. And I just believed it. Because it was easier, I said. She nodded, tears spilling now. Yeah, it was easier. Easier to believe a crying sister than to stop and question the man I married. Easier to look like I was protecting her than admit I didn't really know what was true. I didn't want to think my family could lie about something that serious. I shook my head slowly. You didn't just believe her, Scarlett. You helped her. You let your brothers drag me out like trash. You stood there and did nothing while they filmed it. Her voice broke. I was scared. Of what? The truth, I snapped. Because it sure wasn't of me. She covered her face, shoulders shaking. I've been haunted by it every day. I see your face when I try to sleep. I hear that sound, the slap, over and over again. You were right there, and I didn't even ask a single question. I didn't feel satisfaction, just exhaustion, the kind that sinks into your bones and stays there. You know what's funny? I said quietly. Everyone told me to move on, that the truth would come out eventually. It did. But no one talks about what happens after. The truth doesn't fix the damage. It just shows you how deep the cracks go. She looked up, eyes red. I can't forgive myself. I've tried therapy, church, everything. Nothing works. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry. I stared at her for a long time before saying, I won't forgive you, Scarlett. Not because I hate you. I don't. I just don't believe forgiveness means pretending it didn't happen. She nodded slowly. I get that. But, I continued, you still have to do the right thing. If you really mean what you said, you'll make it right publicly. Not for me. I don't need it. But because you helped bury the truth. You helped destroy a man who didn't deserve it. So go fix what you can. Her lips trembled. I already have. I sent the full recording to every journalist who ever ran that story. I gave them my statement, told them exactly what I did. Good, I said. Now you get to live with that too. For a second, she looked like she wanted to argue, like she thought maybe if she explained it better, I'd finally let her off the hook, but she didn't. She just nodded, quietly accepting that there was no winning this conversation. She pulled her coat tighter and walked toward the door. Scarlett paused before leaving. You were always the better person, she said softly. Even now. I looked past her, at the storm outside. No, I just learned the hard way that some people don't deserve another chance. She stepped out into the rain. Didn't use the umbrella. Just walked straight into it until her shape disappeared down the road. I watched for a moment, then turned back to my desk. My laptop was still open. The screen blinked with a pending task from a client in another city. I sat down, cracked my knuckles, and went back to work. Because life didn't pause for guilt. Not mine, not hers. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone's tears rewrite what I'd already rebuilt. It started small. Not national, not viral, just local. Someone back home posted the video on a community Facebook group. Then it hit the town's news site. Local woman exposed for false assault allegation. No names at first, but everyone there knew exactly who it was. The video was short, blurry, and clear enough to ruin her. Alice, drunk, saying, "He looked at me like I was nothing, so I made him nothing." The same words I'd heard months ago. I didn't upload it. I knew right away it had to be Scarlett. By morning, everyone back home was talking. Local cafes, grocery aisles, even barbershops. You could hear her name whispered like a curse. People who used to praise her were now pretending they always had doubts. The same folks who once said poor Alice were now calling her a monster. It didn't go national or hit big headlines, but back in that town, it spread like fire in dry grass. By the end of the week, Alice's world fell apart. The boutique she worked at back home quietly fired her. No post, no statement, just erased. Her fiancé, that guy with the gelled hair who used to glare at me during holidays, called off their wedding. People saw him moving his stuff out of her apartment in the middle of the night. Her mom, Eloise, got cornered at the grocery store. Someone overheard her arguing with the cashier, who refused to bag her things. The lady just said, "You should be ashamed." The whole store went silent. She left everything on the belt and walked out. Her brothers weren't doing any better. Ben, the loud one, lost his job at the local high school. Parents started complaining once the video of him dragging me out years ago resurfaced online. "Not the example we want for our kids," one mom wrote on Facebook. That was all it took. He resigned. Peter's garage got spray painted twice with the word liar. He closed it the next week and moved out of town. And Scarlett? No one said much about her. She stayed out of sight. I figured she was the one who uploaded it. Maybe to set the record straight, maybe to ease her guilt. Either way, I didn't reach out. I'd already heard enough. It's weird seeing people who once looked at you like a criminal suddenly look at you like a ghost they wronged. I'd go into town for coffee, and people would lower their voices. Some nodded politely. Others said, "Hey, glad you're still around," like I'd died and come back. Not people from my past, just folks here in this harbor town who only knew the rumors secondhand. Even Mrs. Ingram, the old bakery lady who once refused to serve me, slid a bag of bread across the counter one morning and said, "This one's on me, sweetheart." No apology, no explanation, just guilt wrapped in brown paper. That night, after work, I was cleaning up my desk when my phone buzzed. It was an article link someone sent from an unknown number. Headline: Alice hospitalized after overdose attempt. I just stared at it. Didn't open it for a few minutes. When I finally did, the first line said she'd left a letter behind. It mentioned me by name. Said she regretted everything. Said the guilt was eating her alive. Said she never meant for it to go that far. I set my phone down and sat there for a long time. I didn't feel happy or sorry, just tired. For years, I used to imagine that moment, the truth finally coming out, her paying for what she did, everyone realizing I wasn't the monster. But when it actually happened, it didn't feel like victory, it just felt quiet. Like the world had finally caught up to something I already knew. The truth didn't fix my life, it just stopped lying about it. I stepped outside. The air smelled like wet salt and pine. Down by the docks, the water was calm. The kind of calm that made you hear every small sound, the ropes creaking, the waves hitting the wood, the faint hum of crickets starting up for the night. I walked along the shoreline, hands in my pockets, boots kicking at bits of driftwood. A couple of locals nodded as I passed. No one said anything. They didn't have to. Somewhere behind me, the town lights glowed faint through the fog. That small, ordinary town where everyone thought they knew the story. Now they did. I thought about Alice in that hospital bed, about Scarlett hiding somewhere with her guilt, about all the people who cheered when I was dragged out of that house. I wondered if any of them realized that an apology doesn't undo years of damage. A year passed. I didn't move away. I didn't need to. The chaos that once defined me had burned itself out, and what was left was quiet, steady, and real. The people in town had stopped whispering. Now they just nodded when they saw me. A few even came to me for help, not with gossip, but with tech stuff. It started small. A guy from the dock asked if I could help him recover his hacked email. Then another wanted help taking down fake reviews someone was posting about his shop. Word spread fast in small towns, especially when someone actually fixes things. Before I knew it, I had a line of people who wanted me to help them clean their mess online. So I made it official, bought a cheap office downtown, 1 room, 2 desks, a coffee maker that only worked half the time. Put up a sign that said Shoreline Cyber Solutions. I didn't tell people much about my past. Didn't need to. Most knew anyway. I guess that's what made them trust me. Business picked up faster than I expected. Not because I was flashy, but because I didn't sugarcoat things. When clients came in panicking about bad posts or fake rumors, I didn't promise miracles. I told them the truth, that the internet never forgets, but it stops caring once you stop feeding it. Funny thing is, people respected that. Some days I'd have fishermen, teenagers, and business owners all sitting in the waiting area, swapping stories about getting doxxed or scammed. It was weirdly normal. One Thursday afternoon, I was fixing a client's laptop when the doorbell jingled. A kid, maybe 16, stood there holding a phone like it was a piece of evidence. Tall, nervous, the kind of kid who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Are you Mr. Mike? He asked. Yeah, I said. What's up? He hesitated. You're the guy from that story, right? The one who got framed? I froze for a second. I hadn't heard anyone say it out loud in a long time. Where'd you hear that? Online, he said quickly. There was this post. It didn't say your name, but I recognized the town and the details. My mom showed me. She said it was a lesson about how people rush to judge. I nodded slowly. And he pulled out his phone and opened a file. Someone at my school edited a photo to make it look like I was selling test answers, posted it everywhere. I almost got suspended before they found out it was fake. I didn't know how to stop it, so I came here. He looked down at his shoes. That story about you made me realize maybe my life's not over because of one lie. That hit harder than I expected. I told him to sit. We went over how to remove the fake posts, how to report the profiles, how to collect proof in case he needed it. He listened carefully, scribbling notes like it was homework. After he left, I sat there for a while thinking about how I used to obsess over the world knowing I was innocent. Back then, I thought justice meant headlines, apologies, or maybe even a courtroom win. But what I realized was simpler. Justice is surviving long enough to see your life work again. People come in here every week with different stories, but the same kind of pain. Some cheated on, some framed, some just unlucky enough to end up on the wrong side of a rumor. They all start with the same line. I just want my life back. And I get it, because that's all I ever wanted to. Scarlett sent me one last message months ago. It just said, I hope you're doing better. No apology this time, just that. I didn't reply. Some things are better left unanswered. Sometimes when I walk home at night, I pass by the local diner where I first ate when I moved. The waitress still works there. She knows me as Mike, the quiet guy who fixes broken passwords and keeps to himself. I like it that way. Life didn't turn out perfect. I'm not rich, not famous, not redeemed by any dramatic ending. But my name's clean, my work's honest, and I sleep without that pit in my stomach. That's enough. Every now and then, I check that folder, the one with all the old screenshots, news clippings, and proof. I don't look at it to relive it. I look at it to remind myself what it took to get here. Because there are still thousands of people out there who'll never get their truth seen or believed. And maybe that's why I keep doing what I do, helping whoever walks through that door, one digital mess at a time. The internet doesn't forgive easily. It doesn't forget. But it remembers everything, even the truth. You just have to survive long enough for it to surface. That's what I tell people now. Truth doesn't flinch. It just waits. And if you're patient enough, it finds you again. Usually when you've stopped begging for it. I turned off the lights, locked the door, and looked out at the quiet street. Same town, same ocean air, different man. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like winning. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 5. On New Year's Eve, my parents shut down my proposal saying, you don't deserve to carry the family name, and that my brother should marry first. So I cut them off and moved on until years later. A hospital confession revealed why I was only kept alive. Hey Reddit, growing up, my parents made it pretty clear I was the backup kid. I didn't fight it, I just built my own life and walked away. I thought that would be the end of it. Turns out, they had other plans. Before I get into all that, I need to start at the beginning. I'm Joey. I'm 23. I work full-time, keep my head down, pay my bills, and don't ask my parents for anything. I have an identical twin brother named Ross. Identical on paper only. Our faces matched, our builds didn't. Growing up, you wouldn't guess we came from the same house if you watched how we were treated. Ross is taller than me, broader, athletic, the kind of guy adults naturally pat on the back. Teachers loved him. Coaches loved him. My parents, Walter and Lizzie, built their whole identity around him early on. He wasn't just their son, he was their investment. I was the extra part that came with the package. I'm not quiet or timid, never was. I noticed things early and I didn't pretend not to. I use humor when things get uncomfortable, and my parents hated that. They prefer silence and compliance. They called my attitude difficult. Ross didn't have an attitude. Ross had potential. We shared a room growing up, which is where the difference became impossible to ignore. Same room, two different lives. Ross's side had the window. Better light, better air. He had a new desk, clean drawers that didn't stick, shelves that weren't bowing in the middle. When a poster peeled or got ripped, it got replaced. When a gadget came out, it somehow ended up on his side of the room. My side was hand-me-downs. A dresser with one drawer that never closed right. Old paint with scratches that never got touched up. If something broke, it stayed broken. Nobody ever said that was the rule. It just was. You could stand in the doorway and see it clear as day. Physical proof of who mattered more. Lizzie made it worse without saying a word. She touched Ross like she was proud to be seen with him. Hand on the shoulder. Straightening his collar before school. Small gestures that said, "This one is mine." With me, touch only came with correction. Pulling me back from a conversation. Pressing 2 fingers into my arm to shut me up. A hand on my chest to stop me from stepping forward. I don't remember her hugging me. I remember her adjusting me. Walter wasn't subtle either. Everything Ross did was about the future. Sports were about scholarships. Friends were about connections. If Ross messed up, it was growing pains. If I did the same thing, it was proof I wasn't built right. I didn't cry about it. I didn't beg. I made comments. Short ones, dry ones. Stuff like, "Guess my side of the room didn't qualify for the upgrade." That usually got me a look from Lizzie and a lecture about being dramatic. Ross would smirk sometimes, not in a cruel way. He was a kid enjoying good treatment. He didn't question it because why would he? The birthday dinners were the worst because they pretended to be neutral ground. Joint celebration, same candles, same table, same speeches. One year, we're sitting there with relatives from both sides, and the cake comes out. Big white frosting, blue trim. In the center, written clean and bold, is Ross's name. Just Ross. No space left, no correction, no hesitation. The room goes quiet for a half second, long enough for everyone to notice. I look at the cake, then at my parents, then back at the cake. I say, "Guess I'm sharing his wish this year." Just enough to acknowledge reality. Lizzie snaps back immediately. Tells me to stop being dramatic. Says it's just a cake. A few relatives laugh in that uncomfortable way people do when they don't want to pick a side. Ross looks down at his plate. Nobody fixes it. We eat the cake anyway. That was childhood for me. Nothing explosive. Just 1,000 little reminders of where I ranked. Once, not long after that, I caught Lizzie looking at me in a way that didn't match her usual irritation. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was something tighter. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. It lasted maybe a second before she noticed me looking back. Then her face hardened, and she told me to stop hovering and do something useful. I didn't know what to do with that look at the time, but I remembered it. I started working early, not because they forced me to, because money meant control. It meant rides I didn't have to ask for, clothes I didn't have to justify, space that was mine. Ross didn't need that. Everything showed up for him without effort. Fast forward a few years. I'm 17, out of the house more, spending less time there on purpose. Senior year. Already working more hours than I was sleeping. One afternoon, I stopped by a small bakery near my job. Just needed something quick before heading home. That's where I met Trinity. She was behind the counter, flower on her sleeve, hair pulled back like she'd been working all day. I made a comment about the display looking too good to trust. She shot back that it was fine, as long as I didn't ask for recommendations and then ignore them. No flirting script, no awkwardness, just normal. I paid, she handed me the bag, and for once I wasn't being measured against someone else. No comparison, no ranking, just a conversation that stayed where it was. I walked out thinking how strange it felt to be treated like a whole person without having to earn it. Football ran our house. Not casually, not as a hobby. It was the axis everything rotated around. Fall schedules were built around game days. Dinners were timed around practice. Conversations ended early if a highlight reel was coming on. If you didn't know Ross's position, stats, or next matchup, you weren't really part of the family. Ross played linebacker. Big kid, fast, loud on the field. Coaches loved him. Walter lived for it. He learned the rules late and then acted like he'd invented the sport. Every win was proof he was doing something right as a father. Every loss was the ref's fault or a bad call. He wore team gear like a uniform. He introduced himself as Ross's dad, more often than he used his own name. Ross never lacked support. New cleats every season. Extra camps in the summer. Private sessions when a coach hinted he could go further. Walter was at every game, early, loud, pacing the sidelines like he was part of the staff. Lizzie packed snacks for the whole team and made sure Ross's jersey was spotless. They praised effort, toughness, leadership, all words that only seemed to apply to one son. I didn't play football. I tried it once, got shoved into a position I didn't care about, and realized fast that the sport itself wasn't the point. The attention was. I quit without a scene. That didn't mean I stopped training. I ran in the mornings before school, lifted in a cheap gym after work, learned discipline without an audience. I didn't ask for rides or gear. If I needed something, I bought it. If I didn't have it, I adjusted. That became my way. I competed in smaller events, local runs, amateur meets, stuff that didn't come with crowds or cheer sections. I told my parents the dates once. They nodded, said they'd see. They didn't. Not once. No texts, no apologies. Just silence, followed by questions later about how Ross did at practice. The difference wasn't subtle. When Ross played, the house buzzed. When I had something going on, the house stayed the same. I stopped reminding them. It wasn't pride, it was efficiency. Reminding people who don't care just wastes time. Walter never asked about my training. He asked if Ross had eaten enough protein. He asked if Ross's coach had called back. He asked if Ross felt confident about the next game. My work, my schedule, my goals didn't register. Lizzie was quieter, but sometimes worse. I'd be stretching in the driveway or running drills in the backyard and I'd feel eyes on me. I'd look up and catch her watching from the kitchen window. Her face never showed approval or annoyance in those moments. It was something else. Tight. Unsettled. Like she wanted to say something and didn't know how. The second I noticed, she'd turn away or snap at me to stop pacing holes in the grass. One Saturday, I had an event Trinity knew about. She'd asked earlier in the week, casual, like it wasn't a big deal. I told her she didn't have to come. She showed up anyway, sat on the bleachers with a coffee and watched. The stands were empty. No Walter pacing, no Lizzie taking photos. Just her, a few strangers, and the sound of shoes on pavement. After, we walked back to the car. She didn't say anything right away. Then she asked, "They always skip this stuff?" I shrugged. Same move I'd perfected over the years. "They're busy." She didn't argue, didn't comfort. Just nodded like she understood exactly what busy meant in that context. That was the thing about her. She noticed patterns and didn't pretend not to. Back home, Ross came in talking about practice. Walter listened. Lizzie asked questions. I went to my room and stretched in silence. I didn't resent Ross for it. I resented the rules of the house. Sports weren't about teamwork or growth there. They were currency, status, proof. So I kept training without witnesses. I got stronger without praise. I learned early that silence was easier than disappointment, and that discipline didn't need an audience to work. The next 4 years were a blur of shifts and syllabi. I didn't glide through college. There was no smooth path, no safety net, no stretch where things felt easy. I worked my way through it the same way I handled everything else in my life. Head down, no complaints, no expectation that anyone would step in if I stumbled. Full class load every semester, part-time jobs stacked whenever I could manage them. Sometimes 2 at once. Early mornings that started before the sun was up. Late nights that ended with me eating whatever was cheapest and fastest. Weeks blurred together. Wake up, work, class, work again, sleep. Repeat. I didn't tell my parents when things were hard. Not because I was hiding it, but because they never asked. They didn't check in about exams or deadlines or whether I was burning out. I didn't need applause anyway. Applause doesn't pay tuition. I needed the degree. That was the whole point. Trinity was the only consistent presence through all of it. She didn't treat my schedule like something to fix. She didn't give speeches or try to hype me up like a coach before a game. She just existed in my life without conditions. Coffee waiting before early exams. Food in the fridge when I got home late and barely had the energy to speak. A simple, "You good?" that didn't demand a detailed answer or a performance. If I said yes, she accepted it. If I said no, she didn't panic. That steadiness mattered more than encouragement ever could. Graduation day was supposed to be neutral. That's what I told myself. Public space, too many people around for anything weird to happen. Caps and gowns everywhere. Families packed together on metal chairs that creaked when people shifted. I figured at worst it would be quiet and awkward, maybe a little tense. I underestimated how intentional my parents could be when they had an audience. We found our seats early. Ross was a few rows ahead of me, already posing for pictures with Walter and Lizzie. Walter's arm was locked around Ross's shoulders, tight, like he was afraid someone might pull him away at the last second. Lizzie kept adjusting Ross's gown, smoothing wrinkles that weren't there, fixing the cap that didn't need fixing. She looked proud in a way she never looked standing next to me. I stood there with Trinity, watching it happen. I didn't step in. I didn't need to. I already knew how this part played out. The ceremony itself passed in pieces. Names called, applause rising and falling in waves, people cheering louder for some names than others. When Ross's name was read, the clapping around us got louder. When mine was read, Trinity clapped immediately. Ross clapped too. I saw him turn halfway, scanning the crowd for our parents. They clapped, but it felt late, like they were remembering they were supposed to. After it ended, the lawn filled up fast. Cameras everywhere. balloons bobbing over heads. Parents hugging their kids like they were seeing them for the first time. Walter waved us over and told us to follow him to the parking lot. He said it with that tone he used when he had something planned and wanted an audience. Ross got there first. Walter stopped next to a shiny black Mustang parked near the curb. Clean, new, impossible to miss. He reached into his pocket and tossed Ross the keys. Loud. Deliberate. "You earned it," he said, like he was announcing a scholarship win. People around us turned. A couple of Ross's old teammates cheered. Someone whistled. Phones came out instantly. Lizzie hugged Ross, quick and tight, like this moment had been rehearsed down to the timing. Ross laughed, surprised but pleased, holding the keys like he wasn't sure if they were real. Then Walter turned to me. He reached into his jacket and handed me a small box. Light enough that I already knew what it was before I opened it. Inside was a watch. Cheap metal band. The kind you buy last minute because you feel like you should bring something. Lizzie smiled and said, "We're proud of you too, son," in the same tone someone uses when they remember to thank a waiter. I looked at the watch, then at the car, then back at the watch. I didn't plan what I said next. It just came out. "Guess I'll be on time for work." It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. Just a comment that landed exactly where it needed to. For a split second, Lizzie's face changed. Not anger, not annoyance, fear. Like I'd said something I wasn't supposed to know. Like I'd brushed against a wire she'd been taping over for years. Her eyes locked on mine, wide and sharp, and for that brief moment she looked exposed. Then it disappeared. Her jaw set. Her mouth tightened. "Why do you always have to do this?" she snapped. "You can't just let one moment be about your brother." Walter stepped in immediately. Said I was making a scene. Said this wasn't the time. Said I always had to turn things into something they weren't. People around us pretended not to listen while very clearly listening. Conversations nearby slowed. Phones angled slightly in our direction. Trinity didn't say a word. She stood next to me, steady, her hand brushing my arm once. Not to stop me, just to remind me I wasn't standing there alone. Ross looked between us, confused. He didn't say anything. He still had the keys in his hand, turning them over slowly, like he wasn't sure where to put them or what to do next. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I closed the watch box and slipped it into my pocket. I told Ross congratulations and meant it. Then I turned and walked away with Trinity. That was the moment something shut off in me. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. I stopped expecting fairness. I stopped hoping effort would eventually balance the scale. I stopped thinking that if I did enough, things would even out. In the days after, my parents acted like nothing had happened. A text about dinner plans. A question about whether I'd set up the watch yet. Walter sent Ross links about upgrades for the car, like graduation had only belonged to one of us. I replied when necessary. Short answers. No tone, no openings. Graduation was supposed to mark the start of something. It did. Just not what they thought. 6 months later, New Year's Eve rolled around and my parents tried to sell it as a reset. The New Year's Eve party was supposed to be neutral ground. That's how Lizzie pitched it. Both families, one house, clean slate. No drama, just food, noise, and counting down like everyone else. Walter and Lizzie's place was packed. Relatives I barely talked to. People who remembered Ross's stats better than my job title. Kids running between rooms. Music too loud. Everyone holding plates they didn't really want. It was loud enough that you couldn't have a real conversation, which I figured was the point. Trinity stayed close to me. She knew what these events were like. I had the ring in my jacket pocket, heavier than it should have been for something that small. I'd thought through this 100 times. Where to stand. When to do it. I wasn't nervous about her answer. I was realistic about my parents. About an hour in, Lizzie pulled Trinity aside. I noticed immediately. Lizzie didn't ask. She just leaned in, hand on Trinity's elbow, steering her toward the kitchen like it was nothing. I stayed where I was and watched Ross talk to an uncle about work. 10 minutes later, Trinity came back. Same expression. Calm. No anger. She waited until we were near the hallway and said quietly, "Your mom says you can be difficult." She said it like a warning. I nodded. Yeah, that tracks. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was. And I was. At least I thought I was. Walter clinked a glass. Loud, sharp, the music cut, everyone turned. I hadn't planned on a toast yet, but apparently Walter had. He stood in the middle of the living room, arm already around Ross's shoulders. He smiled big, bigger than necessary. He talked about family, about growth, about the coming year and how proud he was of Ross's direction, his discipline, his stability, his trajectory. He used that word twice. He didn't mention me. Not once. People nodded. A few clapped early. Lizzie beamed like this was the point of the night. Ross looked uncomfortable, but didn't pull away. Walter finished with, "Some people just know how to build something solid." That was my cue. I wasn't waiting for the room to come back to me. I stepped forward before the applause died down. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask permission. I took Trinity's hand, dropped to one knee, and pulled out the ring. The room went silent in a way that felt intentional, like everyone was waiting to see what would happen. Walter had been drinking just enough to make his confidence louder than his judgment. Before Trinity could even react, Lizzie gasped and stepped forward. Walter moved faster. He reached down and grabbed my wrist. Hard. "What are you doing?" he snapped. I stood up slowly and pulled my hand back. "Proposing?" Walter laughed once, sharp and ugly. "No, you're not." Lizzie jumped in. "This isn't appropriate. You don't do this here." Walter cut me off. "You haven't earned the right to use this family's name like that. You have nothing to offer her." He gestured toward Ross without even looking at him. "He does." That's when Ross finally spoke. "What the hell are you talking about?" Lizzie waved him off. "Not now." Ross stepped forward. "No, right now. You're embarrassing yourselves." Walter ignored him completely and turned back to me. "You want to play husband? You can't even match your brother. You think love makes up for stability?" The room started buzzing. People whispering, phones coming out. I saw Lara, my cousin, near the couch, already holding her phone up, eyes lit like she'd been waiting for something to happen all night. Ross raised his voice. "Stop, both of you. This is insane." Lizzie snapped back at him. "Don't take his side." "I'm taking the right side," Ross said. "You're out of line." Walter told him to shut up, said he was being disrespectful, said I was ruining the night. I looked at Trinity. She hadn't moved. She was calm in a way that made everything else look ridiculous. I said one sentence. "We're leaving." I didn't wait for a response. I took Trinity's hand and walked out. Behind us, voices overlapped. Lizzie shouting, Walter demanding someone stop us, Ross arguing, Lara filming everything. By the time we got home, my phone was already lighting up. Lara had posted the video as a reel, captioned something about family drama with a laughing emoji. It spread faster than I expected. Comments piled up, people calling out my parents by name, asking why they'd humiliate their son like that. Walter and Lizzie lost it online. They commented back, long paragraphs, accusing me of abandoning them, of betraying family, painting themselves as heartbroken parents whose son turned on them publicly. The family group chat exploded. Aunts, uncles, cousins weighing in, some telling me I should apologize, others saying both sides were wrong, a few pretending they didn't see anything wrong at all. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself. I left the chat, blocked numbers, changed settings. By the end of the night, my phone was quiet. That was the start of no contact. I didn't announce that I was cutting contact. I didn't send a final message or explain myself. I just disappeared. I changed my number and wiped my online presence. I left one line open for Ross only. No one else got it. I set my email so anything from my parents went straight into a folder I never opened. I didn't check it. Silence isn't dramatic when it's deliberate. Life got quieter fast. Just work, training, sleep, repeat. I picked up more hours. Took a better position when it came up. Started making decisions without running them past anyone who thought they owned me. Trinity stayed solid through all of it. She didn't treat the no contact like a crisis or a phase. She didn't push me to talk about my parents, and she didn't pretend they didn't exist either. If I brought them up, she listened. If I didn't, she let it go. That mattered more than comfort ever could. The chaos faded. Routine took its place. Mornings stayed early. Training stayed consistent. Evenings stayed quiet. For the first time, my life felt like it belonged to me instead of reacting to someone else's expectations. A few months in, we went to her parents' place for her birthday. Nothing fancy, dinner at home, cake from a local place. Her parents were normal in a way that still caught me off guard. They asked about work. They listened to answers. No comparisons, no rankings. After dinner, when things slowed down and her parents stepped into the kitchen, I asked Trinity to step out back with me. No crowd, no toast, no interruption. I didn't get on one knee this time. I just handed her the ring and said, "I still want this, just without an audience that hates me." She laughed once, then said yes like it wasn't a question. That was it. No chaos, no commentary. Just a clean moment that didn't need defending. We didn't post it right away. We told the people who mattered. Life moved forward without noise. About a year later, I heard about Ross's engagement by accident. A coworker mentioned seeing something online, and asked if that was my brother. I checked once. One photo, already making the rounds. Ross standing next to his fiancée, smiling in a way that looked genuine. I didn't see an invite. At first, I didn't question it. It made sense in a way. We hadn't spoken much since New Year's. I figured Ross had chosen his side. It stung, but not enough to reopen anything. I'd already accepted that distance was the cost of peace. A week later, Ross called. I almost didn't answer. I picked up out of curiosity, not hope. "Hey," he said. He sounded tense. That was new. I told him he had 5 minutes. He didn't argue. He explained why I wasn't invited to the engagement party. Walter and Lizzie had pushed hard. Said inviting me would send the wrong message. Said it would stir things up. Said it would shift attention away from Ross's moment. They framed it as protection. Ross went along with it. Not because he agreed, but because he froze. Same pressure. Same habits. I hated myself for it, he said. I should have called you immediately. I let him talk. He didn't soften it. He didn't excuse it. He apologized. Clean and direct. I believed him. I told him I'd assumed the worst, and that part was on me. I told him I wasn't angry. I was tired. There's a difference. He asked if we could meet. I said yes, but not at either of our houses. We met for coffee. No parents, no background noise. Just two grown men sitting across from each other without anyone managing the conversation. Ross talked more than I expected. About how the proposal incident cracked something open. How seeing our parents humiliate me in public felt different than hearing them do it privately. How defending me didn't come naturally at first. And how much that bothered him afterward. I thought the pressure was normal, he said. I didn't realize how much of it missed me completely. I didn't unload years of resentment. I didn't need to. He wasn't asking for forgiveness for the past. He was taking responsibility for the present. I told him the truth. None of this was his fault. He didn't design the rules. He just benefited from them. That didn't make him the enemy. It made him human. He looked relieved, like he'd been holding something heavy without knowing what it was. We didn't hug. We shook hands. That felt right. After that, we talked occasionally. No forced closeness. No pretending the past didn't exist. Just honesty and space. That's when something finally settled for me. I stopped tying Ross to our parents in my head. He wasn't the reason I grew up overlooked. He just grew up protected. Life stayed quiet. Good quiet. Trinity and I moved forward without interference. Plans stayed ours. Decisions stayed clean. For the first time, my future wasn't competing with my past. We kept the wedding small on purpose. Trinity and I didn't want a crowd that felt like an obligation. We wanted people who knew us, not people who needed to be impressed. The guest list was tight. Friends who'd been around long enough to know the real version of us. Her parents, a few relatives on our sides who didn't ask weird questions. Ross, Laura. That was it. Walter and Lizzie were not invited. There was no debate about that. No announcement. No explanation. An invitation is a privilege, not a birthright. They'd lost that a long time ago. The day itself was calm. No rushing. Trinity looked relaxed in a way that made everything else fade out. Her parents treated me like I already belonged there. No speeches about family legacy. No comments about what I owed anyone. Ross showed up early. He didn't make it awkward. Didn't act like a mediator. He shook my hand, told me congrats, and said Trinity looked happy. He meant it. That was enough. The ceremony was simple. No dramatic pauses. No long vows that tried to fix old wounds. We promised what mattered and moved on. When it was done, I felt lighter than I expected. Not because I'd gained something, but because I hadn't had to defend it. We didn't post anything that day. Phones stayed in pockets. The night ended quietly. Laura changed that. A few days later, she posted photos from the wedding. Not maliciously, not kindly either. Just Laura doing what Laura always does. Centering herself near the moment and letting the rest burn. The posts spread fast. People noticed who wasn't there. Comments started stacking. Questions followed. Walter and Lizzie found out through Instagram. That's when things got loud. Their reaction had nothing to do with missing me. It had everything to do with being seen. The comments hit where it hurt. Why weren't you at your son's wedding? What kind of parents miss that? This isn't the first time, is it? They responded publicly. Long replies. Defensive explanations. Vague statements about boundaries and misunderstandings. They framed it like they'd been pushed out, like they were victims of a son who'd turned cold. It didn't work. People remembered the New Year's video. Screenshots resurfaced. Clips got reposted. Lizzie's name started showing up in comment threads with words she hated being associated with. Walter tried to joke it off at first. Then he got angry. Then desperate. They moved to private messages when public sympathy didn't show up. Texts, emails, calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Guilt wrapped in concern. Anger dressed up as heartbreak. Claims that I'd embarrassed them, that I'd humiliated the family, that I'd abandoned them when they needed me most. They never once asked if I was happy. I didn't answer anything. I didn't block right away either. I let it pile up and watched the pattern repeat itself without me in it. Then I blocked everything and went back to my life. Trinity didn't ask me to explain my silence. She didn't need reassurance. She saw the messages before I blocked them. She read enough to understand what kind of people we were dealing with. "They're mad they weren't seen," she said once. That was it. No analysis, no comforting speech, just the truth. The internet didn't let them off the hook this time either. More comments, more questions, people noticing patterns. Old stories coming out from relatives who'd kept quiet before. Lara kept posting, feeding it without even trying to. Walter and Lizzie spiraled. You could see it in the way their messages shifted. 1 minute furious, the next pleading. One email accused me of being ungrateful. The next begged me to remember everything they'd done for me. I ignored all of it. The quiet returned. This time, it stuck. A few nights after things finally slowed down, my phone rang. Ross's name came up. I answered. "Hey," he said. He sounded serious, not panicked. That got my attention. I asked what was going on. He paused for a second, then said, "It's about Mom and Dad. Something's happened. Dad wants to talk to you. He says it's important." I didn't answer right away. Lizzie didn't have some dramatic public collapse. No cameras, no scene. She went down at home and didn't come back up fast enough for anyone to pretend it was nothing. The paramedics used words nobody likes: heart rhythm, stroke risk, observation. Overnight turned into tests. Tests turned into that specific kind of quiet that only happens when doctors stop guessing and start measuring. She didn't call me herself. She asked Ross to do it. Ross called late that night. His voice was steady, but there was something under it I hadn't heard before. Not panic. Wait. "She's in the hospital," he said. "She asked for you. Dad wants to talk too. They're saying it's important." I didn't answer right away. "Is this an apology thing?" I asked. "No," Ross said. Then he hesitated. "This is different." Ross doesn't hesitate. That pause mattered. I told him I'd come once. One visit. No promises. No follow-up conversations. He didn't argue. "Okay," he said. Quiet. Trinity drove with me. She didn't lecture me about forgiveness or closure. She didn't try to prepare me for anything. We parked, walked inside, and stopped at the entrance to Lizzie's floor. She squeezed my hand once. "I'll be right here." That was all I needed. Lizzie looked smaller in the hospital bed. Not fragile. Smaller. Like someone who'd finally run out of energy to manage appearances. Walter stood by the window, arms crossed, staring outside like the city had answers. Ross stood near the door, tense, like he already knew whatever was coming wouldn't leave him intact. Lizzie didn't waste time. "I don't have much time," she said. I waited. "And I don't want to die with this in me." That told me everything. This wasn't about me. It was about her not wanting to carry it any longer. She took a breath. "We only wanted one child." Walter didn't look at me. He nodded. "That was always the plan," Lizzie continued. "One pregnancy, one future, one life we could manage." Ross frowned. "What are you saying?" "When the doctor confirmed twins," she said, "we panicked. We didn't talk about it like a blessing. We talked about options." I said nothing. "Selective termination," Lizzie said. She didn't soften it. Ross sucked in a sharp breath. "You're joking." Walter finally spoke, voice calm, clinical. "The specialists explained the risks. Multiple consultations. You were identified as hemodynamically necessary. Losing you would likely mean losing him too." The words sat there, ugly and cold. Lizzie swallowed. "You were smaller. The doctors said you were physically weaker." Ross turned toward me. "What does that mean?" Walter answered like he was reading off a report. "He was providing critical blood flow, shared nutrients. Terminating him would have compromised the stronger fetus." Ross went still. "You mean me?" Lizzie nodded. "So," Ross said slowly, "I'm alive because of him." "Yes," she whispered. The room felt tight, like the air had thickened. Lizzie started crying then. Not loud, not dramatic. Just tears sliding down while her hands shook. "Every time I looked at you," she said to me, "I remembered what we almost did. What we would have done." I stayed still. No shaking. No rush of anger. Just pieces clicking into place. The correction instead of affection. The tension. The way she touched me like I might break something just by existing. Walter cleared his throat. "We regret how things turned out." I looked at him. "That's it?" Lizzie reached for my hand. I stepped back before she could touch me. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I finally spoke. Sorry for what? She blinked. For everything. I shook my head. No. Be specific. She struggled. For how we treated you. I let a beat pass. Sorry for getting caught? Or sorry the internet noticed? Or sorry you had to say it out loud before something worse happened? Walter snapped. That's not fair. I turned to him. You reduced my existence to a medical function 5 minutes ago. Don't talk to me about fair. Ross spoke then, voice strained. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know, I said, and I meant it. Lizzie was crying harder now. I didn't know how to love you, she said. I was afraid of you. Every time I saw you, I thought about what could have happened. That was the closest thing to honesty she'd ever given me. I didn't raise my voice. I wasn't your difficult son, I said. I was your tourniquet. Walter opened his mouth. I didn't let him speak. And now the cord is cut. No one said anything after that. Even the machines felt quieter. I stepped back toward the door. Ross looked like he wanted to stop me, to say something meaningful, to fix something that couldn't be fixed. I shook my head once. Lizzie whispered my name. I didn't answer. I walked out. Trinity stood the second she saw me. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't study my face. She put her arm around me and we left. I didn't feel broken walking out of that hospital. I felt finished, like something had finally been named and put down. So I'll ask you this. What would you do if you found out you weren't kept because you were loved, or even tolerated, but because you were necessary? If your entire childhood suddenly made sense in the worst possible way, would you forgive because they're sorry now? Would you stay connected to people who only valued you when you were useful to someone else's survival? Or would you walk away clean and build something better? I chose distance. I chose the life I already built, and I don't regret it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. Story 6. When I proposed at a family cookout, my dad snatched the ring and said, "Save it for your brother. He's the one who deserves it." I walked out, cut them off, built my life. Then they came crawling back with apologies. Hey, Reddit. This isn't one of those, we had our differences, but deep down, they loved me stories. My parents made it clear from day one that my brother was star and I just exist. What happened next? Let's just say the ending isn't what my parents expected. My name's Lucas. I grew up in a house where there were 2 sons, but only 1 star. My brother Marcus was the star. He was the tall one, the athletic one, the one everybody looked at when we walked into a room. I was just the other kid. Even when we were little, it was obvious. My dad, Joseph, used to say things like, Marcus was born ready for the big stuff. My mom, Eleanor, would nod like she was agreeing with a news report. They didn't say much about me. If they did, it was usually, Lucas is quiet. In the baby album, my hospital bracelet photo is labeled Baby B in a different handwriting. Marcus's page has a caption and a smiley face. Mine doesn't. In middle school, I entered this city science fair. I stayed up for weeks building a little motor from scratch. It wasn't much, but it ran. I got 3rd place. The teacher said it was one of the better projects that year. Nobody from my family came to see it. They said they were busy with Marcus's soccer practice. He was a striker, by the way. Fast kid, always scoring goals. My dad said you can't miss a game because scouts could be watching. This was 7th grade. There were no scouts. Marcus got a whole pizza party after one game where he scored twice. I got a good job when I came home with my little science fair ribbon. They didn't even hang it up. It sat on my dresser until it got lost. When I brought it up once, Dad said, "Well, Marcus is always out there. People see him. He represents the family." He actually said, "represents the family," like we were a business. Meanwhile, I was just trying to make sure my shoes didn't squeak because they were too cheap. The only person who really noticed was my best friend George. We called him Georgie because he hated it. He had this old blue bike with one handlebar wrapped in duct tape. He didn't care what people thought. He saw right through my parents' nonsense too. He was the first one I told about Luna later on. I met Luna when I was 16, working weekends at this local grocery store. She was in charge of the bakery section. I was bagging groceries. She had this way of asking real questions. Not like, how's it going? But, what do you actually want to do after school? I didn't know what to say at first because nobody really asked me that before. My parents always talked about Marcus's future. Scholarships, sports, college visits. Me? They said, you'll figure something out. Luna didn't act like that. She actually listened when I talked about maybe wanting to do something with computers, maybe learn to code or fix things. She said, you'd be good at that. Simple, but it stuck with me. One year, we had this joint birthday party. Marcus and me, same day obviously. 16 candles each, big deal, right? They handed Marcus the keys to a used dirt bike. Everyone cheered. I got a $20 gift card to a bookstore. My dad said, equal value, different interests. I'm pretty sure a dirt bike costs more than 20 bucks, but whatever. Even Marcus looked awkward about it. He handed me one of his cupcakes like it was some kind of peace offering. By the time high school rolled around, I had this quiet plan in my head. Graduate, save up, leave. Every soccer trophy Marcus brought home made it clearer. Every time Dad said, Marcus makes us proud, it got sharper. It wasn't even Marcus's fault. He was just living his life. But I couldn't picture staying in that house one day longer than I had to. The only thing that made it easier back then was Luna. She'd walk home with me after shifts, carrying a bag of leftover bread the bakery was going to toss out. We'd eat it on the curb, talk about music, talk about anything but family stuff. She once said, "You're way too calm about how they treat you." I told her, "What's the point of yelling? They wouldn't hear it anyway." But in my head, I was already counting the days. High school was when everything really started to split apart. Marcus became this local legend on the soccer field. Friday nights, the whole school would show up to watch him play. Parents yelling from the bleachers, girls in his jersey number, teachers talking about college potential. Me? I was usually in the computer lab after school or working extra shifts at the grocery store. Nobody cheered for that. One spring, I got invited to this regional STEM thing through school. Basically, they picked a few kids from each district to visit the university labs, see experiments, meet professors. I was pumped. I told my parents a month in advance. The night before, Mom said, "We can't drive you. Marcus has a game in Riverdale." That was 40 minutes in the opposite direction. I said I could probably get a ride with George. She said, "Do that then." They didn't ask how it went when I got back. Meanwhile, Marcus scored 2 goals that night, and Dad told the story 3 times over dinner the next day. George was the only one who actually cared about my thing. He asked about the labs, the machines, the robots they showed us. He joked that I'd be building laser eyes for cats one day. It was dumb, but it felt good having someone in my corner. Luna asked too, later. We were closing up the grocery store when she said, "So, did the professor people like you?" I told her one of them said I should apply for the summer coding program. "You gonna do it?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. Truth was, I didn't even know how I'd pay for the bus to get there. One night after another, one of Marcus's games, we were all in the kitchen. Marcus was sweaty, still in his jersey, holding this shiny MVP medal. Dad kept talking like recruiters had him on speed dial, like Marcus was about to sign a pro contract at 17. I mentioned the summer coding program just to see if anyone cared. Mom said, "That's nice," without looking up from the dishes. Dad said, "How much does it cost?" I told him the fee. He whistled like I'd said $10,000. It wasn't even that much. "Maybe next year," he said. "Right now we have tournament fees coming up for Marcus's." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Luna heard about the whole thing from me later, and started this little jar at her place. She threw in tips from the bakery. I added my grocery store money. George tossed in coins from fixing bikes around the neighborhood. By the deadline, we actually had enough. I signed up. My parents never asked how I got in. Senior year rolled around and things just kept stacking up. College mail started coming in. Marcus got letters from state universities about playing soccer. He signed with state on a soccer scholarship for the fall. I got a full tuition scholarship for computer science because of a project I did at the summer program. When I told Mom, she smiled politely and said, "That's good, Lucas." Then immediately asked Marcus if he needed new cleats for the fall season. Marcus tried talking to me a couple times that spring. Not about the parents, just random stuff. College plans, Luna, whatever. We weren't close, but he wasn't cruel either. It was like we lived parallel lives in the same house. One night he said, "You know Dad brags about you sometimes at work, right?" "About the computer stuff?" I shrugged. "Never heard it here." He didn't argue. He just nodded like he already knew. By the time graduation came, I had an envelope with some saved up cash, a bus schedule, and a friend with a spare couch in another city. The plan was set. We sort of Graduation day was supposed to be a big deal. For once, I thought maybe things would feel even. Both their sons, same ceremony, same day, same stage. But deep down, I already knew how it would go. The morning started with Marcus getting ready in the living room, fixing his tie in the mirror while Mom adjusted his collar like he was about to meet the president. Dad kept saying, "Big day for the family," over and over. I was in the hallway waiting my turn, holding my gown on a plastic hanger. Nobody noticed. We got there late because Dad wanted to swing by and grab donuts for the road, but ended up chatting with the cashier about Marcus's last soccer season. By the time we parked, The ceremony had already started. We had to walk past rows of seated families while everyone turned to look. I lined up with the other grads, Luna and George waving from the crowd. My parents sat in the back, Dad craning his neck only when Marcus's name was close. They'd shown up late, the donut stop, and were still shuffling to the back when my name got called. If they clapped, I didn't see it. They called me up for my computer science scholarship. I walked across the stage, shook hands, smiled for the picture. The applause was polite, quick. 5 minutes later, Marcus walked up for his sports award, and the place went wild. People stood. The announcer made a joke about future pro athlete right here. Cameras flashed. My parents were on their feet like they were at a concert. After the ceremony, everyone gathered outside for photos. I tried to get one with both my parents, but they were too busy with Marcus and some local reporter who wanted a quote for the school newsletter. I ended up in one group shot where I'm half hidden behind Marcus's shoulder. We went to dinner after. Big family table, cousins, neighbors. Even Marcus's coach showed up. It was noisy, everyone laughing, telling stories. I sat at the end next to George. When the food came out, Dad stood up with this big grin. He held up a small box and said, "For Marcus, our pride and joy, here's something for your future." He handed over a set of car keys. Everyone clapped as Marcus held them up. "First real car, son," Dad said, clapping him on the back. "You'll need it for college, for your games, for life." Then Dad turned to me like he just remembered I existed. He slid a smaller box down the table. "And for Lucas, something useful too." I opened it. A watch. Cheap leather band, brand name I'd never heard of. He said, "Now you won't be late to your classes," like it was a joke. People chuckled politely. Luna squeezed my hand under the table. George muttered something about Dad needing glasses. I put the watch back in the box. "Thanks," I said, because what else was I supposed to say? George leaned over and whispered, "That thing probably loses time." I almost laughed but didn't. Marcus looked uncomfortable, turning the car keys in his hand like he didn't want them anymore. He said, "Maybe we should have split the cost or something." Dad waved him off. "Don't be silly. You'll need it more. Lucas doesn't even drive." It was true, but still. After dinner, people gathered in the parking lot talking about Marcus's future. Some uncle was saying he'd make the draft one day. Mom nodded like it was already decided. Nobody asked about my college plans. Not once. Luna finally spoke up. "Lucas got a scholarship too, you know. A full one for computer science." Mom smiled vaguely. "Oh, that's nice." Then turned back to the soccer talk. That was the moment I knew for sure. I was done. We drove home, everyone tired from the day. Marcus tried talking to me about the car, about maybe sharing it sometimes. I said, "It's yours. Don't worry about it." I went to my room, grabbed the envelope with my saved up cash, and started packing a duffel bag. Luna had already talked to her cousin in the city about me crashing on his couch for a while. Job leads, bus routes, everything lined up. I didn't slam doors or make speeches. I just packed. Around midnight, Dad knocked. "What are you doing?" "Leaving tomorrow," I said. He frowned. "You don't have to rush out. We can help you get set up." I zipped the bag. "I've got it covered." He stood there like he wanted to say something else but didn't. Eventually, he walked away. I left at sunrise while everyone slept. Slipped the watch back on the kitchen counter. Took the bus to the city with George helping carry my stuff. Luna met us there with coffee and a smile that felt like a fresh start. I didn't text my parents when I got to the new place. I didn't post about it online. I just unpacked my things, sat on the lumpy couch, and let the silence settle in. It felt like the first real choice I'd made for myself. That fall, I started at the State University on the full tuition scholarship, commuting from our apartment and taking a lot of classes online so I could keep working. I stayed away for months after moving out. No calls, no visits, nothing. Luna and I built our own little life in the city. Cheap apartment, secondhand furniture, long hours at work, but it felt like ours. Then came the message from Mom. "Family cookout next Saturday. Everyone's coming. Marcus will be there too." I ignored it at first. Then Marcus texted me. "Just come, man. It's been a while." He didn't beg, just said he wanted me there. Said maybe things would be different. I wasn't convinced, but Luna thought maybe it was worth showing up. So we went. The backyard was full when we arrived. Cousins, neighbors, even some of Marcus's old teammates. Big table piled with food, music playing, kids running around. Dad was by the grill, Mom directing traffic like she owned the place. We said hello to a few people, found a spot near the edge. Marcus came over, grinning. "Glad you made it," he said. He didn't look fake about it either. I told him thanks. He leaned closer. "You gonna do it today?" "Yeah," I said. My hand went to my pocket where the ring was. Luna didn't know exactly when I planned to propose, just that it would be today. I figured doing it here might be a step toward making peace. Maybe show my parents I was serious about my own life. An hour in, people started settling with plates of food. Kids sat on the grass, adults in lawn chairs. I got up, cleared my throat. "Hey, everyone," I said. "Can I get your attention for a minute?" People turned. Luna looked confused, then realized what was happening. I started talking about how much she meant to me, how she stuck with me through everything. My voice shook a little, but I kept going. I pulled the ring from my pocket and got down on one knee. That's when Dad walked over. He didn't smile. He didn't clap. He just reached down, took the ring right out of my hand, held it up like it was his. "Let's not waste this," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Save it for Marcus. He'll be married first, like he should be." The whole yard went silent. Luna froze. My ears rang. Marcus stood up so fast his chair fell over. "What the hell, Dad?" Dad waved him off. "I'm just saying, you're the one with a real future. Career, stability. You should be the first to start a family, not your brother here still figuring things out." I stood up. "Give me the ring." Mom came over, arms crossed. "Your father's right, Lucas. It's too soon for you. You barely have anything saved. Marriage takes money, planning. Marcus is settled. It makes sense for him to go first." Marcus moved between us. "You two need to stop. He loves her. That's enough reason." Dad scoffed. "Love doesn't pay bills." Marcus knows that. He thinks ahead. That's why we support him the way we do. I felt my hands shake. "You mean the way you never supported me?" Mom snapped back instantly. "Oh, here we go again. Always playing the victim. We gave you what we could." Marcus turned on her. "No, you didn't. Don't even try that. I saw it my whole life. Him getting scraps while I got everything." Dad's face reddened. "You earned what you got." He didn't. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. "Yeah, I forgot the part where being born less athletic means I deserved nothing." Mom raised her voice. "You think life's been unfair to you? We kept a roof over your head, food on the table. Plenty of parents do less." "Plenty of parents don't humiliate their kid in front of 50 people," Marcus shot back. "Give him the damn ring." Dad still held it like it was his to give. "He's not ready." Luna finally spoke. Her voice was calm but sharp. "With all due respect, this isn't your decision. If Lucas isn't ready, that's for him to figure out. Not you." Some relatives shifted uncomfortably. A few walked toward the house like they didn't want to watch. I stepped closer. "Last time. Give me the ring." Dad stared at me for a long second, then finally dropped it in my hand. "Fine," he said. "Throw your life away if you want." I put it back in my pocket. My hands were steady now. "I'll throw away your opinion before I throw away my life." Marcus muttered, "Good," under his breath. Mom shook her head like she couldn't believe we were all ungrateful. "One day you'll realize we were right," she said. I looked at Marcus. "Did you ever ask to be first? For any of this?" He shook his head. "Never. I just wanted to play soccer. I didn't ask for the car, the money, the attention. I told them more than once to split things fair. They didn't listen." Dad pointed at him. "You deserved it, Marcus. Don't act like you didn't." Marcus looked tired suddenly. Maybe I did, but so did he. Nobody said anything after that. The music had stopped. Kids were staring. Luna touched my arm gently, like asking if I still wanted to do this. I shook my head. "Not today." We left without eating. Marcus followed us to the driveway. "I'm sorry," he said. "They're impossible sometimes." I told him it wasn't his fault, but in my head, I knew things had just broken in a way they wouldn't fix anytime soon. After the cookout disaster, I blocked my parents on everything. Calls, texts, social media, gone. Luna didn't argue. She just nodded like she'd been waiting for me to finally cut the cord. Marcus tried reaching out a couple of times, apologizing for them, saying he didn't agree with any of it. I believed him. He was the only one in that house who ever seemed to notice the way things really were. But I didn't go back. I poured everything into work and school. I was still at the grocery store part-time, but I started doing computer repair gigs for cash. George spread the word around, and soon I had enough clients to quit the store job. Luna worked mornings at the bakery and evenings helping a catering company. We barely saw each other some days, but when we did, it felt like progress. Bills got paid on time. We even saved a little each month. I enrolled at the state university on the full tuition scholarship, stacking evening and online CS classes while working. Nothing fancy at first, just intro courses, but it felt like I was finally heading somewhere. Every time I fixed a laptop or wrote a small script that actually worked, it felt like I was peeling away another layer of my parents' voices, telling me I wasn't good enough. We had this tiny apartment over a laundromat. The walls were thin, and the plumbing rattled when someone upstairs showered. But it was ours. Luna found a couch on some yard sale app for $20. George helped carry it up the stairs, grumbling the whole way, but refusing to let me lift the heavy side. "You're the brains," he said, wiping sweat off his forehead. "I'm the brawn." The thing sagged in the middle, but it was better than sitting on the floor. One night after a long day, Luna came home with a bag of day-old bread from the bakery like she always did. We sat on the couch, eating sandwiches and talking about maybe doing a small wedding. Nothing big, just her family, George, a couple of close friends. "Your parents won't like that," she said carefully. I laughed. "They're not invited." She didn't push back. She knew why. We booked the courthouse date 2 weeks later. I texted Marcus directly the next day. "Hey," I wrote, "small wedding coming up. Just us, Luna's family, George. No drama. You're welcome if you want." He called right away. "You sure about inviting me? If Mom and Dad find out." "They won't," I said. "It's your choice, man. I just want you there, if you can make it." Marcus paused for a second. "I'll try. Seriously. I want to be there." On the morning of the wedding, he called again. "Lucas, I'm stuck out of town for work. Won't make it back in time. I'm sorry, man." "It's fine," I said. "No pressure. I'm proud of you, you know," he said. "Ignore whatever they think. Do your thing." After his first season, he left state and took a field rep job with a sporting goods company. The role kept him on the road most weeks, bouncing between schools and tournaments. So it ended up just being Luna's family, George, and a couple of friends. Courthouse vows, simple rings, photos on someone's phone. George was my witness. Her mom cried happy tears. My side of the aisle was empty, and honestly, it didn't bother me at all. When we got back to her parents' place for dinner, my phone buzzed. "Marcus, congrats, man. I wish I was there. You deserve this." I believed him. A week after the wedding, Marcus called me. "They know," he said. "I didn't tell them. Someone in the family must have. Mom's been pacing all morning. Dad's on a warpath." I wasn't surprised. I figured they'd find out eventually. I didn't expect the knock on our apartment door that night, though. It was them. Dad and Mom standing in the hallway like they owned the place. Luna froze beside me. "Married?" Dad started before he even stepped inside. "You went and got married behind our backs?" "Yeah," I said. "We did." Mom's voice was sharp. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Sneaking off like criminals?" I laughed once. "Everything you've done for me? Like the cookout? Like graduation?" Dad cut in, louder now. "You embarrassed this family. Marriage isn't some backyard game, Lucas. You think you can just run off with the first girl who says yes?" Luna spoke up then. "Actually, it's our life, not yours." Mom ignored her completely. "Marcus would have done this right. Big ceremony, proper announcements, family involved. Not this secret little stunt." Marcus, who'd come with them, finally snapped. "Would you stop comparing everything to me? He doesn't owe you a show. None of this is about you." Dad turned on him. "Don't start. You know we expected better from both of you." Marcus stepped forward. "No, you expected control. That's all this is. He didn't do it your way, so now you're throwing a fit." Mom shook her head like he was speaking another language. "Families are supposed to be involved in these decisions." I said, "Families are supposed to support their kids. You never did that for me. Not once." Dad pointed at me. "We kept food on the table." "That's the bare minimum," Marcus shot back. "You want a trophy for feeding him?" The room went dead quiet after that. Mom's eyes narrowed. "One day you'll both regret this. Cutting us out like we're strangers." I said, "Maybe, but it won't be today." They left without another word, the door slamming behind them. Marcus stayed behind, looking tired. "I'm sorry, man. They just don't get it." I told him it wasn't on him to apologize. He wasn't the problem. The next few months blurred into work, classes, and fixing up the apartment. I bought a secondhand desk for $50 and set up a little workspace in the corner. Started taking on more complex repair jobs. Some nights I stayed up late watching tutorials, Luna asleep on the couch beside me. Marcus visited once, bringing takeout. He looked around the apartment like he was seeing my life for the first time. "Mom says you're ignoring them," he said carefully. I shrugged. "They earned it." He nodded. "Yeah, they did." Summer came, and with it, bigger repair jobs. A small business hired me to fix their office computers. Paid well, too. Enough that Luna and I started looking at bigger apartments, someplace not over a laundromat. One evening, we sat on the couch eating cheap takeout when George came by with a used bookshelf he found online. We set it up in the corner, and Luna filled it with secondhand books and a couple of framed photos from the wedding. It was the first time our place actually felt like a home. Then, out of nowhere, Marcus called one night. His voice was tight. "Dad had a heart attack," he said. "He's in the hospital." For a second, I didn't say anything. Marcus went on. "He's okay. They say it wasn't massive, but they want to see you." Luna looked at me from across the room, waiting. I told Marcus I'd think about it and hung up. I didn't owe them anything, but part of me wanted to hear whatever excuse they had left. The next afternoon, I walked into the hospital room. Dad was sitting up in bed, pale but awake. Mom was in the chair beside him, arms crossed, looking like she was holding a grudge against the air itself. Marcus stood near the window. He gave me a quick nod. Dad cleared his throat. "You came." "I'm not here for small talk," I said. "Say what you need to say." Mom glared at me, but Marcus spoke first. "Maybe just let him talk, okay?" Dad looked down at his hands. "We only ever wanted one child," he said finally. "We found out we were having twins, and it wasn't the plan." I didn't move. So, he said slowly. "We decided early on we'd keep one. The stronger one. The one we thought had the best shot." I felt my jaw tighten. "You mean Marcus?" He nodded like it was a fact, not an apology. "You were smaller. Sick a lot as a baby. We even had a family lined up to adopt you." Marcus turned from the window. "You never told me that." Dad rubbed his face. "They backed out. Said they couldn't split twins. After that, no one else wanted to take just one baby. So we kept you both, and treated us like we weren't equal," I said. He didn't argue. We thought focusing on Marcus made sense. He was healthy, athletic. People liked him. We figured giving him more would pay off for the family. Mom finally spoke. "We gave you a home. We didn't have to do more than that." Marcus snapped then. "Do you even hear yourselves? You treated him like a spare part." Dad looked at him tiredly. "We thought changing things later would hurt you. You were used to the attention. He wasn't. We didn't want to disrupt what worked." I laughed once, sharp and ugly. "Worked for who?" "Certainly not for me." Dad winced but didn't back down. "After the heart attack, I booked us with a family therapist. It was my idea. We see it now. The favoritism. The damage. We were wrong." I stared at him. "You think admitting this erases it?" "No," he said. "But I don't want to leave things like this. I don't want to go without you knowing the truth." Mom still hadn't softened. "We did what we thought was best. You don't have to like it." Marcus turned on her. "Best for who, Mom?" "Because it sure wasn't best for him. Or me, honestly. You think I liked being the golden child? You made me feel like if I ever screwed up, I'd lose everything too." That shut her up for the first time all day. I looked at Marcus. "Did you know any of this?" He shook his head. "I knew they were unfair. I didn't know they tried to give you away." Dad leaned back against the pillows like the confession had taken everything out of him. "I can't undo it. I want a chance to make things right now." I stood there for a long moment. "You don't get to decide that." "I do." He nodded slowly. "I understand." I turned to leave, but Marcus stopped me at the door. "You okay?" "No," I said. "But I'm done letting them control the story." We walked out together, leaving our parents in that room with their choices. A few months passed after the hospital visit. I kept my distance. They had their confession, and I had my answer. That didn't erase anything. Life moved on. Luna and I found a slightly bigger apartment closer to the bus lines. After a couple of semesters, I got a steady IT job through one of the small businesses I'd done freelance work for. It paid enough to cover bills, savings, and even a decent used car. Then Marcus called one evening. "I'm getting engaged," he said. I told him congratulations, and I meant it. He hesitated before adding, "They want you there. Mom and Dad. They said they'll behave." I laughed quietly. "That'll be the day." He sighed. "Look, I get it. I really do. But I want you there because you're my brother, not because of them." So Luna and I went. The engagement party was huge. Catered food, music, people dressed like it was a wedding already. Dad and Mom were there, but they kept their distance at first. They'd been in counseling since the hospital, and for once it actually showed. Marcus spotted us, grinning. "You made it," he said, hugging me like he hadn't done since we were kids. Luna handed his fiancée a small gift we'd picked out together. They both looked genuinely happy. Halfway through the night, Dad finally came over. He looked older than I remembered. "Lucas," he said carefully. "Thanks for coming." I nodded. "I'm here for Marcus." He didn't argue, didn't try to make it about him. That was new. Mom came next. "We'd like to meet Luna properly sometime," she said. Her voice wasn't warm, but it wasn't icy either. Luna gave a polite smile. "Maybe." It was the kind of answer that said, "You're not owed this." Later, Marcus pulled me aside. The music was loud, people laughing in the background. "I need to say something," he said. I know you went through hell with them. I saw it. I didn't stop it enough. I was the favorite, and I let it slide because it was easier for me. You were a kid, I said. It wasn't your job to fix it. Still, he said, shaking his head, you deserved better. Way better. I told him the truth. I don't want an apology from you. I just want us to be brothers, without all the garbage they built between us. He nodded slowly. I want that too. It was the first real conversation we'd had as equals. Toward the end of the night, Dad finally approached me. I know we can't change the past, he said, voice low, but we'd like to be part of your life now. Both of you, if you'll let us. I looked him dead in the eye. Here's how this goes. No insults, no comparisons. You treat me, Luna, and any kids we might have with respect. Every time. No slip-ups, no excuses. You show up right, or you don't show up at all. He nodded slowly. And understand this, I added. My voice stayed steady, but there was no give in it. This isn't me asking for anything. I built my life without you. I don't need a redo. You want to be in it, you follow my rules. You earn your place. Otherwise, stay out. He didn't argue. Couldn't. For once, they just listened. On the drive home, Luna asked how I felt. Lighter, I said. And I meant it. We got back to our apartment and unpacked the leftovers Marcus sent with us. I hung up the one decent photo someone took of us at the wedding. Me, Luna, Marcus, his fiancée, all smiling like normal people. The next weekend, I built a bookshelf for the second bedroom we were turning into an office. Hung my old scholarship certificate above it. Straight this time, not crooked like it used to be at my parents' place. Not because I needed to prove anything anymore, but because it was mine, and this was my life now. Over the next year, my parents called a few times. Never demanding, never insulting. Sometimes just to ask how work was going, or to wish Luna happy birthday. I didn't trust it right away, but I noticed they actually listened now. They sent Christmas cards for the first time ever. Wrote both our names on them. It didn't fix things. Some stuff doesn't get fixed, but it made life quieter, cleaner. Marcus got married that spring. Big wedding, all the family there, even us. No speeches comparing us. No weird tension. Just a normal day where nobody was fighting for once. At the reception, he raised his glass and said, "To my brother Lucas, for showing me what standing your ground looks like." People clapped. I didn't make a speech back. I just clinked my glass with Luna's and enjoyed the moment. Back home that night, Luna asked if I thought things were better now. Better, I said. Not perfect, but better. I didn't need more than that. Because the truth was, I'd already built my own life. One they couldn't control, couldn't take credit for, couldn't ruin. And that was enough. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.